Section 17 of Mosquitos. First day, 10 p.m. "It's being an artist," Mrs. Moyer said to herself with helpless despondence. Mrs. Wiseman, Miss Jameson, Mark, and Mr. Taliaferro sat at bridge. She herself did not like playing. The strain of her party kept her too nervous and wrought up. "You simply cannot tell what they're going to do," she said aloud in her exasperation, seeing again Major Ayres vanishing, awkward shape, and Fairchild leaning over the rail and howling after him like a bull-voiced druid priest at a sacrifice. "Yes," Mrs. Wiseman agreed. "It's like an excursion, isn't it? All drunkenness and trampling around," she added, attempting to finesse. "Damn you, Mark." "It's worse than that," the niece corrected, pausing to watch the hissing fall of cards. "It's like a cattle boat, all trampling around." Mrs. Moray sighed. "Whatever it is," her sentence died, stillborn. The niece drifted away, and a tall shape appeared from shadow and joined her, and they went on down the dark deck and from her sight. It was that queer, shabby Mr. Gordon, and she knew a sudden, sharp stab of conscience of having failed in her duty as a hostess. She had barely exchanged a word with him since they came aboard. "It's that terrible Mr. Fairchild," she told herself, but who could have known that a middle-aged man and a successful novelist could or would conduct himself so? The moon was getting up, spreading a silver flare of moonlight on the water. The Nausicaa swung gently at her cables, motionless but never still, sleeping but not dead, as is the manner of ships on the seas of the world, cradled like a silver dreaming gull on the water. Her yacht, her party, people whom she had invited together for their mutual pleasure. "Maybe they think I ought to get drunk with them," she thought. She roused herself, creating conversation. The card players shuffled and dealt interminably, replying to her remarks, irrelevant and detached, or pausing to answer sensibly with a patient deference. Mrs. Moyer rose briskly. "Come, people, I know you're tired of cards. Let's have some music and dance a while." "I'd rather play bridge with Mark than dance with them," Mrs. Wiseman said. "Whose trick was that?" "There'll be plenty of men when the music starts," Mrs. Moyer said. Replied Mrs. Wiseman. "It'll take more than a Victrola record to get any men on this party. You'll need extradition papers, 3 without and 3 aces. How much is that, Ernest?" "Would you like to dance, Mr. Taliaferro?" Mrs. Moyer persisted. "Whatever you wish, dear lady." Mr. Taliaferro answered with courteous detachment, busy with his pencil. "That makes—" He totted a column of his neat fingers. Then he raised his head. "I beg your pardon. Did you say something?" "Don't bother," Mrs. Moyer said. "I'll put on a record myself. I'm sure our party will gather when they hear it." She wound up the portable Victrola and put on a record. "You finish your rubber, and I'll look about and see whom I can find," she added. They replied. The Victrola raised its teasing rhythms of saxophones and drums, and Mrs. Moyer prowled round, peering into the shadows. She found the steward first, whom she dispatched to the gentleman with a command couched in the form of an invitation. Then further along she discovered Gordon and her niece sitting on the rail with her legs locked about a stanchion. "Do be careful," she said. "You might fall. We're going to dance a while," she added happily. "Not me," her niece answered quickly. "Not tonight, anyway. You have to dance enough in this world on dry land. You will certainly not prevent Mr. Gordon dancing, however. Come, Mr. Gordon, we need you." "I don't dance," Gordon answered shortly. "You don't dance," Mrs. Moyer repeated. "You really don't dance at all?" "Run along, Aunt Pat," the niece answered for him. "We're talking about art." Mrs. Moyer sighed. "Where's Theodore?" she asked at last. "Perhaps he will help us out. He's in bed. He went to bed right after dinner. But you might go down and ask him if he wants to get up and dance." Mrs. Moyer stared helplessly at Gordon. Then she turned away. The steward met her. The gentlemen were sorry, but they had all gone to bed. They were tired after such a strenuous day. She sighed again and passed on to the companionway. There seemed to be nothing else she could do for them. "I've certainly tried," she told herself, taking this thin satisfaction, and stopped again while something shapeless in the dark companionway unblent, becoming 2, and after a while Pete said from the darkness, "It's me and Jenny." Jenny made a soft, meaningless sound, and Mrs. Moyer bent forward suspiciously. Mrs. Wiseman's remark about excursion boats recurred to her. "You are enjoying the moon, I suppose?" she remarked. "Yes'm," Jenny answered. "We're just sitting here." Don't you children want to dance? They've started the Victrola, Mrs. Moyer said, in a resurgence of optimism. Yes'm, said Jenny again after a while, but they made no further move, and Mrs. Moyer sniffed, quite genteelly, and she said, icily, Excuse me, please. They made room for her to pass, and she descended without looking back again and found her door. She snapped the light switch viciously, then she sighed again. It's being an artist, she told herself again, helplessly. Damn, 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 said Mrs. Wiseman, slapping her cards on the table. The Victrola record had played itself through and into an endless, monotonous rasping. Mark, stop that thing, as you love God. I'm far enough behind without being jinxed. The ghostly poet rose obediently, and Mrs. Wiseman swept her hand amid the cards on the table, scattering them. I'm not going to spend any more of my life putting little spotted squares of paper in orderly sequence for 3 dull people. Not tonight, anyway. Give me a cigarette, someone. She thrust her chair back, and Mr. Taliaferro opened his case to her. She took one and lifted her foot to the other knee and scratched a match on the sole of her slipper. Let's top a while instead. Where on earth did you get those garters? Miss Jameson asked curiously. These? She flipped her skirt down. Why, don't you like 'em? They're a trifle out of the picture on you. What kind would you suggest for me? Pieces of coloured string? You ought to have black ones clasped with natural-size red roses, Mark Frost told her. That's what one would expect to find on you. Wrong, me good man, Mrs. Wiseman answered dramatically. You have wronged me foully. Where's Mrs. Moyer, I wonder? She must have caught somebody. That Gordon man, perhaps, Miss Jameson replied. I saw him at the rail yonder a while ago. Ah, Mr. Taliaferro, exclaimed Mrs. Wiseman. Look out for yourself. Widders and artists, you know. You see how susceptible I am myself. Wasn't there ever a fortune-teller to warn you of a tall red stranger in your destiny? You are a widow only by courtesy, the poet rejoined, like the serving-maids in 16th century literature. So are some of the artists, my boy, Mrs. Wiseman replied, but all the men on board are not even artists. What, Ernest? Mr. Taliaferro bridled smugly through the smoke of his cigarette. Mrs. Wiseman consumed hers in an unbroken series of deep draughts and flipped it railward, a twinkling scarlet coal. I said talk, she reminded them, not a few mild, disjointed beans of gossip. She rose. Come on, let's go to bed, Dorothy. Miss Jameson sat, a humourless inertia. And leave that moon? Mrs. Wiseman yawned, stretching her arms. The moon spread her silver, ceaseless hand on the dark water. Mrs. Wiseman turned, spreading her arms in a flamboyant gesture, in silhouette against it. Ah, moon, poor, weary one. By yon black moon, she apostrophized. No wonder it looks tired, the poet remarked hollowly. Think of how much adultery it's had to look upon, or assume the blame for, Mrs. Wiseman amended. She dropped her arms. I wish I were in love, she said. Why aren't you? And Ernest. More. Come on, Dorothy. Let's go to bed. Have I got to move? Miss Jameson said. She rose, however. The men rose also, and the 2 women departed. When they'd gone, Mr. Taliaferro gathered up the cards Mrs. Wiseman had scattered. Some of them had fallen to the deck. End of section 17, read by Sandra. Section 18 of Mosquitos. First day. 11 o'clock. Mr. Taliaferro tapped diffidently at the door of Fairchild's room, was bidden, and opening it he saw the Semitic man sitting in the lone chair, and Major Ayres and Fairchild on the bunk, holding glasses. Come in, Fairchild repeated. How did you escape? Push her overboard and run? Mr. Taliaferro grinned with deprecation, regarding the bottle sitting on a small table, rubbing his hands together with anticipation. The human body can stand anything, can't it? The Semitic man remarked. But I imagine Taliaferro is just about at the end of his rope without outside aid, he added. Major Ayres glared at him affably with his china blue eyes. Yes, Taliaferro's sure earned a drink, Fairchild agreed. Where's Gordon? Was he on deck? I think so, Mr. Taliaferro replied. I believe he's with Miss Robin. Well, more power to him, Fairchild said. Hope she won't handle him as roughly as she did us, eh, Major? You and Major Ayres deserved exactly what you got, the Semitic man rejoined. You can't complain. I guess so. but I don't like to see a human being arrogating to himself the privileges and pleasures of Providence. Quelling nuisances is God's job. How about instruments of Providence? Oh, take another drink, Fairchild told him. Stop talking so Taliaferro can have one anyway. Then we better go up on deck. The ladies might begin to wonder what's become of us. Why should they? The Semitic man asked innocently. Fairchild heaved himself off the bunk and got Mr. Taliaferro a tumbler. Mr. Taliaferro drank it slowly, unctuously, and accepted another. He emptied his glass with a flourish. He grimaced slightly. They had another drink and Fairchild put the bottle away. Let's go up a while, he suggested, prodding them to their feet and herding them toward the door. Mr. Taliaferro allowed the others to precede him. Lingering, he touched Fairchild's arm. The other glanced at his meaningful expression and paused. I want your advice, Mr. Taliaferro explained. Major Ayres and the Semitic man halted in the passage, waiting. Go on, you fellows, Fairchild told them. I'll be along in a moment. He turned to Mr. Taliaferro. Who's the lucky girl this time? Mr. Taliaferro whispered a name. No, this is my plan of campaign. What do you think? Wait, Fairchild interrupted. Let's have a drink on it. Mr. Taliaferro closed the door again, carefully. Fairchild swung the door open. And you think it'll work? Mr. Taliaferro repeated, quitting the room. Sure, I think it's airtight, that she might just as well make up her mind to the inevitable. No, really, I want your candid opinion. I have more faith in your judgment of people than anyone I know. Sure, Fairchild repeated solemnly. She can't resist you. No chance at all. To tell the truth, I kinda hate to think of women and young girls going round exposed to a man like you. Mr. Taliaferro glanced over his shoulder at Fairchild, quickly, doubtfully, but the other's face was solemn without guile. Mr. Taliaferro went on again. Well, wish me luck, he said. Sure, the Admiral expects every man to do his duty, you know, Fairchild replied solemnly, following Mr. Taliaferro's dapper figure up the stairs. Major Ayres and the Semitic man awaited them. There were no ladies, nobody at all, in fact. The deck was deserted. Are you sure? Fairchild insisted. Have you looked good? I kind of wanted to dance some. Come on, let's look again. At the door of the wheelhouse they came upon the helmsman. He wore only an undershirt above his trousers and he was gazing into the sky. Fine night, Fairchild greeted him. Fine now, the helmsman agreed. Bad weather off there, though. He extended his arm toward the southwest. Lake may be running pretty high by morning. We're on a lee shore, too. He stared again into the sky. I guess not, Fairchild replied with large optimism. Hardly on a clear night like this, do you reckon? The helmsman stared into the sky, making no answer. They passed on. I forgot to tell you the ladies had retired, Mr. Taliaferro remarked. That's funny, Fairchild said. I wonder if they thought we were not coming back. Perhaps they were afraid we were, the Semitic man suggested. Huh, said Fairchild. What time is it, anyway? It was 12 o'clock, and the sky toward the zenith was hazed over, obscuring the stars. But the moon was still undimmed, bland and chill, affable and bloodless as a successful procurist, bathing the yacht in quiet silver, and across the southern sky went a procession of small clouds, like silver dolphins on a rigid ultramarine wave, like an ancient geographical woodcut. End of section 18. Read by Sandra near Montreal, 2023. Section 19 of Mosquitos. Second day, 3 a.m. By 3 o'clock, the storm had blown itself out across the lake, and by dawn, when the helmsman waked the captain, the lake, as he had predicted, was running pretty high. The trend was directly inshore. Waves came up in endless battalions under a cloudless sky, curling and creaming along the hull, fading and dying as the water shoaled astern of the yacht to a thin white smother against a dark, impenetrable bank of trees. The Nausicaa rose and fell, bows on, dragging at her taut cables. The helmsman roused the captain and returned swiftly to the wheelhouse. The deckhand got the anchors up and the helmsman rang the telegraph. The Nausicaa shivered awake, coming to life again, and pausing for a moment between two waves like a swimmer. She surged ahead. She paid off a little and the helmsman spun the wheel, but she didn't respond, falling off steadily and gaining speed, and as the helmsman put the wheel down hard, then I sick it fell broadside on into the trough of the waves. The helmsman rang the telegraph again, and shouted to the deckhand to let go of the anchors. By 7 o'clock the Nausicaa, dragging her anchors, had touched bottom with a faint jar. She considered a moment, then freed herself, and crawling a bit further up the shoaling sand, she turned herself a little, and with a barely perceptible list, she sat down like a plump bather waist-deep in the water, taking the waves on her beam. Dorothy Jameson had a bold, humorless style. She preferred portraits, though she occasionally painted still life, harsh, implacable fruit and flowers in dimensionless bowls upon tables without depth. Her teeth were large and white in the pale revelation of her gums, and her gray eyes were coldly effective. Her body was long, loosely articulated and frail, and while spending in Greenwich Village the 2 years she had considered necessary for the assimilation of American tendencies in painting, she had taken a lover although she was still a virgin. She took the lover principally because he owed her money, which he had borrowed of her in order to pay a debt to another woman. The lover ultimately eloped to Paris with a wealthy Pittsburgh lady, pawning her, Dorothy's, fur coat on the way to the dock and mailing the ticket back to her from shipboard. The lover himself was a musician. He was quite advanced, what is known as a radical, and in the intervals of experimenting with the conventional tonal scale, he served as part of an orchestra in an uptown dancing place. It was here that he met the Pittsburgh lady. But this episode was complete, almost out of her memory even. She had had a year abroad and had returned to New Orleans, where she settled down to a moderate allowance which permitted her a studio in the Vieux Carré and her name several times on the police docket for reckless driving and a humorless and reasonably pleasant cultivation of her individuality, with no more than a wild occasional nagging at the hands of her family, like a sound of rain heard beyond a closed window. She had always had trouble with her men, principally through habit, since that almost forgotten episode she had always tried for artists, but sooner or later they inevitably ran out on her, with the exception of Mark Frost, that is, and in his case she realized it was sheer inertia more than anything else, and she admitted with remote perspicuity, who cared one way or the other whether they kept Mark Frost. No one ever cares long for an artist who does nothing save create art, and very little of that. But other men she recognized as having potentialities, all passed through a violent but temporary period of interest, which ceased as abruptly as it began, without leaving even the lingering threads of mutually remembered incidents, like those brief thunderstorms of August that threaten and dissolve for no apparent reason, without producing any rain. At times she speculated with almost masculine detachment on the reason for this. She always tried to keep their relations on the plane which the men themselves seemed to prefer. Certainly no woman would, and few women could, demand less of their men than she did. She never made arbitrary demands on their time, never caused them to wait for her nor to see her home at inconvenient hours, never made them fetch and carry for her. She fed them, and she flattered herself that she was a good listener. And yet, she thought of the women she knew, how all of them had at least one obviously entranced male. She thought of the women she had observed, how they seemed to recline a man at will, and if he failed to stay acquired, how readily they replaced him. She thought of the women on board, briefly revealing them. Eva Wiseman. She had had one husband, practically discarded him. Men liked her. Fairchild, for instance, a man of undisputed ability and accomplishment. If this might be due to her friendship with her brother. But no, Fairchild was not that sort. Social obligations rested too lightly upon him. It was because he was attracted to her, because of kindred taste. But I create too, she reminded herself. Then she thought of the two young girls, of the niece Patricia, with her frank curiosity in things, her childish delight in strenuous physical motion, of her hard unsentimentality, and no interest whatever in the function of creating art. I'll bet she doesn't even read. And Gordon, aloof and insufferably arrogant, yet intrigued. And Fairchild, also interested in his impersonal way. Even Pete, probably. Pete and Jenny. Jenny with her soft placidity, for she had passive appeal to the senses, and Miss Taliaferro, braving Mrs. Moria's displeasure to dangle about her, fawning almost. Even she felt Jenny's appeal, an utterly mindless ripeness of young, pink flesh, a supine potential fecundity, lovely to look upon, a doll awaiting a quickening and challenging it, with neither joy nor sorrow. She had brought one man with her. No, not even brought. He had followed her in her blonde troubling orbit as a tide follows the moon, without volition, against his inclination perhaps. Two women who had no interest whatever in the arts, yet who without effort drew to themselves men, artistic men, opposites, antitheses. Perhaps, she thought, I have been trying for the wrong kind of men. Perhaps the artistic man is not my type. End of section 19. Section 20 of Mosquitos. Second day, 7 a.m. No, ma'am, the nephew replied courteously. It's a pipe. Oh, she murmured, a pipe. He bent over his wooden cylinder, paring at it with a knife, delicately, with care. It was much cooler today. The sun had risen from out a serrated miniature sea into a cloudless sky. For a while the yacht had had a perceptible motion. It was this motion which had roused her, but now it had ceased, although sizable waves yet came in from the lake, creaming whitely along the hull, and spent themselves shoaling up the beach toward a dark cliff of trees. She'd had no idea last night that they were so close to land either, but distances always confused her by night. She wished she'd brought a coat. Had she anticipated such a cool spell in August? She stood huddled in her scarf about her shoulders, watching his brown, intent forearms and his coarse, cropped head, exactly like his sister's, mildly desiring breakfast. I wonder if he's hungry, she thought. Sure you aren't. Aren't you rather chilly this morning without a coat? He carved at his object with a rapt maternal absorption, and after a while she said louder, wouldn't it be simpler to buy one? I'd hope so, he murmured. Then he raised his head and the sun shone full into his opaque, yellow-flicked eyes. What did you say? I should think you'd wait until we got shore and buy one instead of trying to make one. You can't buy one like this. They don't make 'em. The cylinder came in two sections, carved and fitted cunningly. He raised one piece, squinting at it, and carved an infinitesimal sliver from it. Then he returned it to its husband. Then he broke them apart again, and carved an infinitesimal sliver from the other piece, fitted them together again. Miss Jameson watched him. Do you carry the design in your head? She asked. He raised his head again. Huh? He said in a dazed tone. The design you're carving. Are you just carving from memory or what? Design, he repeated. What design? It was much cooler today. There was in Pete's face a kind of active alarm not quite yet dispersed, and clutching a sheet of newspaper he rose with belated politeness. But she said, No, I'll get it. Keep your seat. So he stood acutely, clutching his paper, while she fetched a chair and drew it up beside his. It's quite chilly this morning, isn't it? Sure is, he agreed. When I woke up this morning and felt all that cold wind and the boat going up and down, I didn't know what we were into. I didn't feel so good this morning anyway, and with the boat going up and down like it was. It's still now, though. Looks like they went in closer to the bank and parked it this time. Yes, it seems to me we're closer than we were last night. When he was settled, he sat also, and presently he forgot and put his feet back on the rail. Then he remembered and removed them. Why, How did you manage to get a paper this morning? Did we put in shore somewhere last night? She asked, raising her feet to the rail. For some reason he felt uncomfortable about his paper. It's just an old piece, he explained lamely. I found it downstairs somewhere. It kinda kept my mind off of how bad I felt. He made a gesture repudiating it. Don't throw it away, she said quickly. Go on. Don't let me interrupt it. You found something interesting in it. I'm sorry you aren't feeling well. Perhaps you'll feel better after breakfast. Maybe so, he agreed without conviction. I don't feel much like breakfast. Waking up like I did and feeling kinda bad. And the boat going up and down, too. You'll get over that, I'm sure. She leaned nearer to see the paper. It was a single sheet of a Sunday magazine section, a depressing-looking article in small print about Romanesque architecture, interspersed with blurred, indistinguishable photographs. Are you interested in architecture? She asked intensely. I guess not, he replied. I was just looking it over until they get up. He slanted his hat anew under cover of this movement. He raised his feet to the rail, settling down on his spine. She said, So many people waste their time over things like architecture and such. It's much better to be a part of life, don't you think? Much better to be in it yourself and make your own mistakes, and enjoy making them and suffering for them, than to make your life barren through dedicating it to an improbable and ungrateful posterity. Don't you think so? I hadn't thought about it, Pete said cautiously. He lit a cigarette. Breakfast is late today. Of course you hadn't. That's what I admire about a man like you. You know life so well that you aren't afraid of what it might do to you. You don't spend your time thinking about life, do you? Not much, he agreed. A man don't want to be a fish, though. You'll never be a fish, Pete. Everyone calls you Pete, don't they? To your mind. I think the serious things really are the things that make for happiness. People and things that are compatible. Love. So many people are content just to sit around and talk about them, instead of getting out and attaining them, as if life were a joke of some kind. You have a cigarette? Thanks. You smoke this brand too, I see. Thanks. I like your hat. It just suits the shape of your face. You have an extremely interesting face, do you know it? And your eyes. I never saw eyes exactly the color of yours, but I suppose lots of women have told you that, haven't they? I guess so, Pete answered. They'll tell you anything. Is that what love has meant to you, Pete? Deception? She leaned to the match, staring at him with the humorless invitation of her eyes. Is that your opinion of us? They don't mean anything by it, Pete said in something like alarm. What time do they have breakfast on this line? He rose. I guess I better run downstairs a minute before it's ready. It oughtn't to be too long, he added. Miss Jameson was gazing quietly out across the water. She wore a thin scarf about her shoulders, a wet, radiant thing that lent her a bloodless fragility, as did the faint ridge of freckles, relict of a single afternoon of sunlight, across her nose. She now sat suddenly quiet, poising the cigarette in her long, delicate fingers, and Pete stood beside her, acutely uncomfortable. Why, he knew not. I guess he'll go downstairs before breakfast, he repeated. Say, he extended his newspaper, why don't you look it over while I'm gone? Then she looked at him again and took the paper. Pete, you don't know much about us for all your experience. Sure, he replied. I'll see you again, see? And he went away. I'm glad I had a clean collar yesterday, he thought, turning into the companionway. This trip sure ought to be over in a couple of years. Just as he began the descent, he looked back at her. The newspaper lay across her lap, but she wasn't looking at it, and she had thrown the cigarette away too. My God, Pete said to himself. Then he was struck by a thought. Pete, my boy, he told himself, it's going to be a hard trip. He descended into the narrow passage. It swept forward on either hand, broken smugly by space-mute doors with brass knobs. He slowed momentarily, counting doors to find his own. And while he paused, the door at his hand opened suddenly, and the niece appeared, clutching a raincoat about her. "Hello," she said. "Don't mention it," Pete replied, raising his hat slightly. "Jenny up too." "Say, I dreamed you lost that thing," the niece told him. "Yes, she'll be out soon, I guess." "That's good. I was afraid she was going to lay there and starve to death." "No, she'll be out pretty soon." They stood facing each other in the narrow passage, blocking it completely, and the niece said, "Get on, Pete. I feel too tired to climb over you this morning." He stood aside for her, and watching her retreat, he called after her, "Losing your pants." She stopped and dragged at her hips as a shapeless fabric descended from beneath the raincoat, and wandered slow and lethargic about her feet. She stood on one leg and kicked at the mass. Then, stooping, she picked from of its folds a man's frayed and shapeless necktie. "Damn that string," she said, kicking out of the garment and picking it up. He turned in the narrow corridor, counting discrete identical doors. He smelled coffee, and he added to himself, "A hard trip and, with unction, I'll tell the world it is." End of section 20. Section 21 of Mosquitos. Second day, 8 a.m. "It's the steering gear," Mrs. Morier explained at the breakfast table. "Some." "I know," Mrs. Wiseman exclaimed immediately above the grapefruit. "German spies." Mrs. Morier stared at her with patient astonishment. She said, "How cute." "It worked perfectly yesterday." The captain said it worked perfectly yesterday. But this morning when the storm came up. Anyway, we're aground, and they are sending someone to get a tug to pull us off. They are trying to find the trouble this morning, but I don't know. Mrs. Wiseman leaned toward her and patted her fumbling ringed hand. There. Don't you feel badly about it. It wasn't your fault. They'll get us off soon, and we can have just as much fun here as we would sailing around. More, perhaps. Motion seems to have had a bad effect on the party. I wonder." Dear child and his people had not yet arrived. Before each vacant place its grapefruit, innocent and profound. Surely just the prospect of more grapefruit couldn't have driven them. Mrs. Morier followed her gaze. "Perhaps it's just as well," she murmured. "Anyway, I've always wanted to be shipwrecked," Mrs. Wiseman went on. "What do they call it? Scuttle the ship, isn't it?" But surely Dawson and Julius couldn't have thought of this, though. Mrs. Warrior, brooding above her plate, raised her eyes, cringing. No, the other answered herself hastily. "Of course not. That's silly. It just happened as things do. But let this be a lesson to you, children, never to lay yourselves open to suspicion," she added, looking from the niece to the nephew. The steward appeared with coffee, and Mrs. Morier directed him to leave the gentleman's grapefruit until it suited their pleasure to come for it. "They couldn't have done it if they had wanted to," the niece replied. "They don't know anything about machinery. Josh could have done it. He knows all about automobile motors. I bet you could fix it for him. If you wanted to, couldn't you, Gus?" He didn't seem to have heard her at all. He finished his breakfast, eating with a steady and complete preoccupation, then thrusting his chair back, he asked generally for a cigarette. His sister produced a package from somewhere. It bore yet faint traces of finger-scented powder, and Miss Jameson said sharply, "I've wondered who took my cigarettes. It was you, wasn't it? I thought you'd forgot 'em, so I brought 'em up with me." She and her brother took one each, and she slid the package across the table. Miss Jameson picked it up, stared into it a moment, then put it in her handbag. The nephew had a patent lighter. They all watched with interest, and after a while Mr. Taliaferro, with facetious intent, offered him a match. But it took fire finally, and he lit a cigarette and snapped the cap down. "Give me a light too, Gus," his sister said quickly, and from the pocket of his shirt he took 2 matches, laid them beside her plate. He rose. He whistled 4 bars of Sleepy Time Gal monotonously. ending on a prolonged excruciating melt. And from the bed clothing at the foot of his bunk, he got the steel rod and stood squinting his eyes against the smoke of his cigarette, examining it. One end of it was kind of blackened, and pinching the cloth of his trouser leg about it, he shuttled it swiftly back and forth. Then he examined it again. It was still kind of black. The smoke of his cigarette was making his eyes water, so he spat it out and ground his heel on it. After a time, he found a toothbrush and crossing the passage to a laboratory, he scrubbed the rod. A little of the black came off, onto the brush, and he dried the rod on his shirt and scrubbed the brush against the screen on a port, then against a red-lettered water pipe, and then against the back of his hand. He sniffed in it, a kind of machinery smell yet, but you won't notice it with toothpaste on it. He returned and replaced the brush among Mr. Taliaferro's things. He whistled 4 bars of Sleeping Tiger, but not earnestly. The engine room was deserted, but he was making no effort toward concealment anyway. He found the wrenches again and went to the battery room, and restored the rod without haste, whistling with monotonous preoccupation. He replaced the wrenches, and stood for a while examining the slumbering engine with rapture, and still without haste, he quitted the room. The captain, the steward, and the deckhand sat at breakfast in the saloon. He paused in the door. "Broke down, have we?" he asked. "Yes, sir," the captain answered shortly. They went on with their breakfast. "What's the trouble?" No reply, and after a time he suggested, "Engine play out?" "Steering gear," the captain answered shortly. "You ought to be able to fix that." "Where is the steering gear?" "Engine room," the captain replied. The nephew turned away. "Well, I haven't touched anything in the engine room." The captain bent above his plate, chewing. Then his jaws ceased and he raised his head sharply, steering after the nephew retreating down the passage. End of section 21. Section 22 of Mosquitos. Second day, 10 a.m. The trouble with you, Taliaferro, is that you ain't bold enough with women. That's your trouble. But Fairchild wouldn't let him finish. I don't mean with words. They don't care anything about words except as little things to pass the time with. You can't be bold with them with words. You can't even shock them with words. Though the reason may be that half the time they are not listening to you. They ain't interested in what you're going to say. They are interested in what you're going to do. Yes, but how do you mean be bold? What must I do to be bold? How do they do it everywhere? Ain't every paper you pick up full of accounts of men being caught in Kansas City or Omaha under compromising conditions with young girls who've been missing from Indianapolis and Peoria and even Chicago for days and days? Surely if a man get as far as Kansas City with a Chicago girl, without her shooting in through chance or affection, or sheer exuberance of spirits or something, he can pretty safely risk a New Orleans girl. But why should Taliaferro want to take a New Orleans girl, or any other girl, to Kansas City? The Semitic man asked. They ignored him. I know, Mr. Taliaferro rejoined, but these men have always just robbed a cigar store. I couldn't do that, you know. Well, maybe New Orleans girls won't require that. Maybe they haven't got that sophisticated yet. They may not be aware that their favors are worth as high as a cigar store. But I don't know. They are moving pictures, and some of them probably even read newspapers too. So I advise you to get busy right away. The word may already have got around that if they just hold off another day or so, they can get a cigar store for practically nothing. And there ain't very many cigar stores in New Orleans, you know. But the Semitic man put in again. Taliaferro doesn't want a girl in a cigar store both, you know. That's right, Fairchild agreed. You ain't looking for tobacco, are you, Taliaferro? End of section 22. Section 23 of Mosquitos. Second day, 11 a.m. No, sir, the nephew answered patiently. It's a pipe. A pipe. Fiachao drew nearer, interested. What's the idea? Will it smoke longer than an ordinary pipe? Holds more tobacco, bah? Smoke's cooler, the nephew corrected, carving minutely at his cylinder. Won't burn the tongue. Smoke the tobacco down to the last grain, and it won't burn your tongue. You change gears on it kind of like a car. Well, I'll be damned. How does it work? Piaggio dragged up a chair, and the nephew showed him how it worked. Well, I'm damned, he repeated, taking fire. Say, you ought to make a pile of money out of it, if you make it work, you know. It works, the nephew answered, joining his cylinders again. Made her little one out of pine. Smoked pretty good for a pine pipe. It'll work all right. What kind of wood are you using now? Cherry. He carved and fitted intently, bending his closed dark head above his work. The child watched him. Well, I'm damned, he said again in a sort of heavy astonishment. Honey, nobody thought of it before. Say, we might form a stock company, you know, with Julius and Naja heirs. He's trying to get rich right away at something that don't require work. And this pipe is a lot better idea than the one he's got. I can't imagine even Americans spending very much money on something that don't do anything except keep your bowels open. It's too sensible for us, even though we will buy anything. Your sister tells me you and she are going to Yale College next month. I am, he corrected without raising his head. She just thinks she's going too. That's all. She kept on worrying Dad until he said she could go. She'll be wanting to do something else by then. What does she do? Fairchild asked. I mean, does she have a string of bows and run around dancing and buying things, like most girls like her do? No, the nephew answered. She spends most of her time in mine, too, tagging around after me. Oh, she's all right, I guess, he added tolerantly, but she hasn't got much sense. He unfitted the cylinders, squinting at them. After she changes gears, is it? The child leaned nearer again. Yes, she's a pretty nice sort of kid. Kinda like a racehorse colt, you know. So you're going up to Yale. I used to want to go to Yale myself once, only I had to go where I could. I guess there is a time in the life of every young American of the class that wants to go to college or accepts the inevitability of education when he wants to go to Yale or Harvard. Maybe that's the value of Yale and Harvard to our American life. A kind of illusion of an intellectual nirvana that makes the ones that can't go there work like hell where they do go, so as not to show up so poorly alongside of the ones that can go there. Still, 90 out of 100 Yale and Harvard turn out are reasonably bearable to live with, if they ain't nothing else. And that's something to be said for any manufactory, I guess. But I'd like to have gone there. The nephew was not listening particularly. He shaved and trimmed solicitously at his cylinder. Pietro said, It was a kind of funny college I went to. A denominational college, you know, where they turn out preachers. I was working in a mowing machinery factory in Indiana, and Elmer the factory was a trustee of this college. He was a sanctimonious old fellow with a beard like a goat, and every year he offered a half scholarship to be computed for by young men working for him. You won it, you know, and he found you a job near the college to pay your board, but not enough to do anything else, to keep you from fleshly temptations, you know. And he had a monthly report on your progress sent to him, and I won it that year. It was just for 1 year, so I tried to take everything I could. I had about 6 or 7 lectures a day, besides the work I had to do to earn my board. I kind of got interested in learning things. I learned in spite of the instructors we had. They were a bunch of broken-down preachers, head full of dogma and intolerance, and a belly full of big, meaningless words. English literature course whittled Shakespeare down because he wrote about whores without pointing a moral, and one instructor always insisted that the head devil in Paradise Lost was an inspired prophetic portrait of Darwin, and they wouldn't touch Byron with 10-foot balls, and Swinburne was reduced to his mother and his old standby, the ocean. And I guess they'd have cut this out had they worn one-piece bathing suits in those days. But in spite of it, I kind of got interested in learning things. I would like to have looked inside of my mind after that year was up. He gazed out over the water, over the snoring waves, steady and wind-frothed. He laughed, and I joined a fraternity too, almost. The nephew bent over his pipe. The child produced a package of cigarettes. The nephew accepted one with abstraction. He accepted a light also. I guess you've got your eye on a fraternity, haven't you? Fairchild suggested. Senior club, the nephew corrected shortly. If I can make it. Senior club, Fairchild repeated. That means you won't join for 3 years, eh? That's a good idea. I like that idea. But I had to do everything in 1 year, you see. I couldn't wait. I never had much time to mix with other students. 6 hours a day at lectures, and the rest of the time working and studying for next day. But I couldn't help but hear something about it, about rushing and pledges and so on, and how so-and-so were after this fellow and that, because he made the football team or something. There was a fellow at my boarding house, a kind of handsome, tall fellow he was, always talking about the big athletes and such in school. He knew them all by their first names, and he always had some yarn about girls. Always showing you a pink envelope or something, a kind of gentlemanly innuendo, protecting their good names. He was a senior, he told me, and he was the first one to talk to me about fraternities. He said he had belonged to one a long time, though he didn't wear a badge. He had given his badge to a girl who wouldn't return it. You see, Fairchild explained again, I had to work so much. You know, getting into a rut of work for bread and meat, where chance couldn't touch me much. Chance and information. That's what they mean by wisdom, or have sense, you know. He was the one that told me he could get me in his fraternity if I wanted to. He drew at his cigarette, flipped it away. It's young people who put life into ritual by making conventions a living part of life. Only old people destroy life by making it a ritual, and I wanted to get all I could out of being at college. The boy that belongs to a secret pirates gang and who dreams of defending an abstraction with his blood hasn't quite died out before 21, you know, but I didn't have any money. Then he suggested that I get more work to do temporarily. He pointed out to me other men who belonged to it, or who were going to join, baseball players and captains of teams, and prize scholars and all. So I got more work. He told me not to mention it to anybody, that was the way they did it. I didn't know anybody much, you see, he explained. I had to work pretty steady all day. No chance to get to know anybody well enough to talk to them. He mused upon the ceaseless fading battalions of waves. So I got some more work to do. This had to be night work, so I got a job helping to fire the college power plant. I could take my books along and study while the steam was up. Only it cut into my sleep some, and sometimes I would get too drowsy to study. So I had to give up one of my lecture courses, though the instructor finally agreed to let me try to make it up during the Christmas vacation. But I learned how to sleep in a cinder pile or a coal bunker anyway. The nephew was interested now. His knife was idle in his hand. His cylinder reposed, forgetting the agony of wood. It would take $25, but working overtime as I was, I figured it wouldn't be any actual cost at all, except the loss of sleep, and a young fellow can stand that if he has to. I was used to work, you know, and it seemed to me that this was just like finding $25. I had been working about a month when this fellow came to me and told me that something had happened and that the fraternity would have to initiate right away, and he asked me how much I had earned. I lacked a little of having $25, so he said he would loan me the difference to make it up. So I went to the powerhouse manager and told him I had to have some money to pay a dentist with, and got my pay up to date and gave it to this fellow. And he told me where to be the following night, behind the library at a certain hour. So I did. I was there like he said. Fairchild laughed again. Whatever did the nephew asked, "Jip you?" It was cold that night, late November, and a cold wind came right out of the gourd, whistling around that building among the bare trees, just a few dead leaves on the trees, making a kind of sad, dry sound. We had won a football game that afternoon, and I could hear yelling occasionally, and see lights on the dormitories were the ones that could afford to, lids, warm and jolly looking, with the bare trees swaying and waving across the windows, still celebrating the game we had won. So I walked back and forth, stamping my feet, and after a while I went around the corner of the library where it wasn't so cold, and I could stick up my head occasionally in case they came looking for me. From this side of the building, I could see the hall where the girl students lived. It was all lighted up, as if for a party, and I could see shadows coming and going upon the drawn shades, where they were dressing and fixing their hair and all. And pretty soon I heard a crowd coming across the campus, and I thought, here they come at last. But they passed on, going toward the girls' hall, where the party was. I walked up and down some more, stamping my feet. Pretty soon I heard a clock striking 9. In half an hour I'd have to be back at the powerhouse. They were playing music at the party. I could hear it even in spite of the closed windows, and I thought maybe I'd go closer. But the wind was colder. There was a little snow in it, and besides I was afraid they might come for me, and I wouldn't be there. So I stamped my feet, walking up and down. Pretty soon I knew it must be 9:30, but I stayed a while longer, and soon it was snowing hard, a blizzard. It was the first snow of the year, and somebody came to the door of the party and saw it, and then they all came out to look, yelling. I could hear the girls' voices kind of high and excited and fresh, and the music was louder. Then they went back, and the music was faint again, and then the clock struck 10. So I went back to the powerhouse. I was already late. He ceased, musing on the glittering battalions of waves and hands of wind slapping them whitely. He laughed again. But I nearly joined one, though. How about the bird, the nephew asked. Didn't you hunt him up the next day? He was gone. I never saw him again. I found out later he wasn't even a student in the college. I never did know what became of him. Fairchild rose. Well, you get it finished and reform a stock company and get rich. The nephew sat clutching his knife in his cylinder, gazing after Fairchild's stocky back until the other passed from view. You poor goof, the nephew said, resuming his work again. End of Section 23. Section 24 of Mosquitos. Second day, 2 p.m. It was that interval so unbearable to young active people, directly after lunch on a summer day. Everyone else was dozing somewhere, no one to talk to and nothing to do. It was warmer than in the forenoon, though the sky was still clear and waves yet came in before a steady wind, slapping the Nausicaa on her comfortable beam, and creaming on to fade and die frothing up the shoaling beach and still palisade of trees. The niece hung over the bows, watching the waves. They were diminishing. By sunset there would be none at all. But occasionally one came in large enough to send up a thin, exhilarating spray. Her dress whipped about her bare legs, and she gazed downward into the restless water, trying to make up her mind to get her bathing suit. But if I go in now, I'll get tired, and then when the others go in later, I won't have anything to do. She gazed down into the water, watching it surge and shift and change, watching the slack anchor cables severing the incoming waves, feeling the wind against her back. Then the wind blew upon her face and she idled along the deck and paused again at the wheelhouse, yawning. Nobody there. But that's so. The helmsman went off early to get word for a tug. She entered the room, examining the control fixtures with interest. She touched the wheel tentatively. It turned all right. They must have fixed it, whatever was broken about it. She removed her hand and examined the room again, hopefully, and her eyes came upon a binocular suspended from a nail in the wall. Through the binoculars she saw a blur in 2 colors, but presently under her fingers the blur became trees startlingly distinct, and separate leaf by leaf and bough by bough, and pendants of rusty green moss, with beards of contemplative goats, ruminating among the trees and above a yellow strip of beach, and a smother of foam in which the sun hung like fleeting green bows. She watched this for a time, entranced, and swinging the glass slowly, waves slid past at arm's length, curling and creaming, and swinging the glass further, the rail of the yacht leapt monstrously into view, and upon the rail a nameless object emitting at that instant a number of circular yellow basins. The yellow things fell into the water, seemingly so near, yet without any sound, and swinging the glass again, the thing that had emitted them was gone, and in its place the back of a man, close enough for her to touch him by extending her hand. She lowered the glass, and the man's back sprang away, becoming that of the steward carrying a garbage pail, and she knew then what the yellow basins were. She raised the glass again, and again the steward sprang suddenly and silently within reach of her arm. She called, "Hey!" and when he paused and turned, his face was plain as plain. She waved her hand to him, but he only looked at her a moment. Then he went on and around a corner. She hung the binocular back on its nail and followed along the deck where he had disappeared. Inside the companionway and obliquely through the galley door, she could see him moving about, washing the luncheon dishes, and she sat on the top step of the stairs. There was a small round window beside her, and he bent over the sink while light fell directly upon his brown head. She watched him quietly, intently but without rudeness, as a child would, until he looked up and saw her tanned, serious face framed loudly in the port. "Hello," she said. "Hello," he answered as gravely. "You have to work all the time, don't you?" she asked. "Say, I like the way you went over after that man yesterday. With your clothes on, too. Not many have sense enough to dive away from the propeller. What's your name?" "David West," he told her, scraping the stew pan and sloshing water into it. Steam rose from the water, and about it bobbed a cake of thick, implacable-looking yellow soap. Then he sat bent forward to see through the window, rubbing her palms on her bare calves. "It's too bad you have to work whether you are aground or not," he remarked. "The captain and the rest of them don't have anything to do now, except just lie around. They can have more fun than us now. And Pat's kind of terrible," she explained. "Have you been with her long?" "No, ma'am. This is my first trip. But I don't mind light work like this. Ain't much to do when you get settled down to it. Ain't nothing to what I have done." "Oh, you don't. You ain't had a regular cook, are you?" "No, ma'am, not regular. It was Mr. Fairchild got me this job with with her." "He did. He knows everybody almost, don't he?" "Does he?" She gazed through the round window, watching a blackened kettle brighten beneath his brush. Soap froth, piled like summer clouds, floated in the sink like small reflections of clouds. "Have you known him long?" she asked. "Mr. Fairchild, I mean." "I didn't know him any until a couple of days ago. I was in that park where that statue is, down close to the docks, and he came by and we were talking, and I wasn't working then, and so he got me this job. I can do any kind of work," he added with quiet pride. "You can? You don't live in New Orleans, do you?" "Indiana," he told her. "I'm just traveling around." "Gee," the niece said, "I wish I were a man like that. I bet it's all right, going around wherever you want to. I guess I'd work odd shifts. That's what I'd do." "Yes," he agreed. "That's where I learned to cook, on the ship." "Not." "Yes'm, to the Mediterranean ports last trip." "Gee," she said again. "You've seen lots, haven't you? What would you do when the ship got to different places? You didn't just stay on the ship, did you?" "No'm, I went to a lot of towns away from the coast." "To Paris, I bet." "No'm," he admitted, just a trace of apology. "I never seemed to get to Paris. But next." I knew you wouldn't, she said quickly. Say, men just go to Europe because they say European women are fast, don't they? Are European women like that? Promiscuous, like they said? I don't know, he said. I know. I bet you never had time to fool with them, did you? That's what I'd do. I wouldn't waste my time on women if I went to Europe. They make me sick. These little college boys in their balloon pants and colored stickers all over their suitcases, bringing empty cognac bottles back with them, and snickering about French girls and trying to make love to you in French. Say, I bet where you went, you could see a lot of mountains of little cute towns on the side of them, and old gray walls and ruined castles on the mountains, couldn't you? Yes'm, and one place was high over a lake. It was blue like washing water, he said finally. Water with bluing in it. They were bluing in the water when they wash clothes, country folks do, he explained. I know, she said impatiently. Were there mountains around it? The Alps mountains, and little white boats on it no big as a water beetles. You couldn't see 'em moving. You only could see the water kind of spreading out to each side. The water would keep on spreading out until it pretty near touched both shores whenever a boat passed. And you could lay on your back on the mountain where I was and watch eagles flying around way up over the water until sunset. Then the eagles all went back to the mountains. David gazed through the port, past her sober tanned face mooned there by the round window, not even seeing it any more, seeing instead his washing powder-colored lake and his lonely mountains and eagles against the blue. And then the sun would go down, and sometimes the mountains would look like they were on fire all over. That was the ice and snow on 'em. It is pretty at night, too, he added simply, scrubbing again at his pots. Geez, she said, with hushed young longing, and that's what you get for being a woman. I guess I'll have to get married and have a bunch of kids. She blushed him with her grave, opaque eyes. No, I'm not either, she said fiercely. I'm going to make Hank let me get there next summer. Can't you go back then, too? Say, you fixed it up to go back then, and I'll go home and see Hank about it, and then I'll come over. Josh will want to come too, most likely, and you'll know where the places are. Can't you do that? I guess I could, he answered slowly. Only what? Nothing, he said at last. Well, you fix it up to go then. I'll give you my address, and you can write me when to start and where to meet you. I guess I couldn't go over on the same boat you'll be on, could I? I'm afraid not, he answered. Well, it'll be all right anyway. Gee, David, I wish we could go tomorrow, don't you? I wonder if they let people swim in that lake. But I don't know. Maybe it's nicer to be away up there where you were, looking down at it. Next summer. Her unseeing eyes rested on his brown busy head, while his spirit lay on his belly above Maggiore, watching little white boats no bigger than water beetles, and the lonely, arrogant eagles, aloft in blue, sun-shot space, surrounded and enclosed by mountains, cloud-brooded, taller than God. David dried his pots and pans and hung them along the bulkhead in a burnished row. He washed others' dishcloths and hung them to dry upon the wall. The niece watched him. It's too bad you have to work all the time, she said with polite regret. I'm all done now. Let's go swimming then. It ought to be good now. I've just been waiting for somebody to go in with me. I can't, he answered. I've got a little more work I better do now. I thought you were through. Will it take you very long? If it won't, let's go in then. I'll wait for you. Well, you see, I don't go in during the day. I go in early in the morning before you are up. Say, I hadn't thought of that. I bet it's fine then, isn't it? How about calling me in the morning when you are ready to go in? Will you? He hesitated again, and she added, watching him with her sober, opaque eyes. Is it because you don't like to go swimming with girls? That's all right. I won't bother you. I swim pretty well. You won't have to keep me from drowning. It ain't that, he answered lamely. You see, I haven't got a bathing suit, he blurted. Oh, is that all? I'll get my brother's for you. It'll be kind of tight, but I guess you can wear it. I'll get it for you now if you'll go in." "I can't," he repeated. "I've still got some cleaning up to do." Well, she got to her feet. "If you won't then. But in the morning, you promised, you know." "All right," he agreed. "I'll try to be awake. But you just knock on the door, the second door on the right of the passage, you know." She turned on her silent bare feet. She paused again. "Don't forget you promised," she called back. Then her flat boy's body was gone, and David turned again to his work. The niece went on up the deck and turned the corner of the deckhouse on her silent feet, just in time to see Jenny routed and dispersed and attacked by Mr. Taliaferro. She sat back beyond the corner, unseen. Boldness? But Fairchild had said you can't be bold with words. How then to be bold? To try to do anything without words, it seemed to him, was like trying to grow grain without seed. Still, Fairchild had said, "Who knew people, women?" Mr. Taliaferro prowled restlessly, having the boat to himself practically, and presently he found Jenny sleeping placidly in a chair in the shade of the deckhouse. Blonde and pink and soft in sleep was Jenny, a passive, soft abandon fitting like water to the sagging embrace of the canvas chair. Mr. Taliaferro envied that chair with a surge of fire, like an adolescence in his dry bones. And while he stood regarding the sprawled awkwardness of Jenny's sweet thighs and legs, and one little soiled hand dangling across her hip, that surge of dominance and fire and desolation seemed to lightly distend all his organs, leaving a thin, salty taste on his tongue. Mr. Taliaferro glanced quickly about the deck. Then feeling rather foolish, but strangely and exuberantly young, he came near and bending, he traced with his hand lightly the heavy laxness of Jenny's body through the canvas which supported her. Then he thought terribly that someone was watching him, and he sprang erect with an alarm like a nausea, staring at Jenny's closed eyes. But her eyelids lay shadowed, a faint transparent blue upon her cheeks, and her breath was a little regular wind, come recently from off fresh milk. But he still felt eyes upon him, and he stood acutely, trying to think of something to do, some casual gesture to perform. A cigarette his chaotic brain supplied at last, but he had none, and still spurred by this need, he darted quickly away into his cabin. The nephew slept yet in his berth, and breathing rather fast, Mr. Taliaferro got his cigarette, and then he stood before the mirror, examining his face, seeking wildness, recklessness there, but of Board's customary expression of polite, faint alarm, and he smoothed his hair, thinking of the sweet, passive sag of that deck chair. Yes, almost directly over his head. He rushed back on deck in a surge of fear that she had waked and risen, gone away. He restrained himself by an effort to a more sedate pace, reconnoitering the deck. All was well. He smoked his cigarette in short, nervous puffs, hearing his heart, tasting that warm salt. Yes, his hand was actually trembling, and he stood in a casual attitude looking about at water and sky and shore. And he moved, and still with casualness, he strolled back to where Jenny slept, unchanged, her supine abandon, soft and oblivious and terrifying. Mr. Taliaferro bent over her. Then he got on one knee, then on both knees. Jenny slept ineffably, breathing her sweet regular breath upon his face. He wondered if he could rise quickly enough in an emergency. He rose and looked about, and tiptoed across the deck, and still on tiptoe, he fetched another chair and set it beside Jenny's, and sat down. But it was for reclining, so he tried sitting on the edge of it. Too high, and amid his other chaotic emotions was a hairy despair of futility, and an implacable passing of opportunity, while all the time it was as though he stood nearby yet aloof, watching his own antics. He lit another cigarette with hands that trembled, took 3 puffs that he did not taste, and cast it away. "Are this floor his old knees?" "Yes, yes." Jenny, her breath. "Yes, yes." Her red soft mouth, with little teeth but showed parted blondness, a golden pink swirl kaleidoscopic, a single blue eye not come fully awake, her breath. Yes, yes. He felt eyes again, knew they were there, but he cast all things away and sprawled nuzzling, but Jenny smiled as she came awake. Wake, sleeping princess, kiss, Mr. Taliaferro jabbered in a dry falsetto. Jenny squealed, moving her head a little. Then she came fully awake and got her hand under Mr. Taliaferro's chin. Wait, princess, with kiss, Mr. Taliaferro repeated, laughing at an hysterical laugh, obsessed with an utter and dreadful need to complete the gesture. Jenny heaved herself up, thrusting Mr. Taliaferro back on his heels. What you doing, you old? Jenny glared at him, and seeking about in that dead, pinkish region, which was her mind, she brought forth finally an expression such as a steamboat mate or a railroad flagman, heated with wine, might apply to his temporary Saturday night Felida, who would charge him for it by the letter, like a cablegram. Jenny watched Mr. Taliaferro's dapper dispersion with soft, blonde indignation. When he had disappeared, she flopped back again. Then she snorted, a soft, indignant sound, and turned again onto her side. Once more she expelled her breath with righteous indignation, and soon thereafter she drowsed again and slept. End of section 24. Section 25 of Mosquitos. Second day, 9 p.m. It was a sleazy scrap of slightly soiled apple green crepe, and its principal purpose seemed to be that of indicating vaguely the shape of Jenny's behind as she danced, caressing the twin soft points of her thighs with the lingering sterility of an aged lover. It looked as if she might have slept in it recently, and there was also a small head of pale straw of no particular shape, ribboned. Jenny slid about at Mr. Taliaferro's embrace with placid skill. She and Pete had just quarreled bitterly. Pete had, that is. Jenny's bovine trouble and placidity had merely dissolved into tears, causing the eyes to be more ineffable than ever, and she had gone calmly about what she had intended all the time, to have as much fun as she could, as long as she was here. Pete couldn't walk out on her. All he could do would be to fuss at her or sulk, or maybe hit her. He had done that once, thereby voluntarily making himself her bond slave. She had never liked it. Beyond the lights, beyond the sound of the Victrola, water was a minor ceaseless sound in the darkness. Above, vague drowsy stars. Jenny danced on placidly, untroubled by Mr. Taliaferro's endless flow of soft words against her neck, hardly conscious of his hand, sliding the small concentric circle at the small of her back. She looks kinda nice, don't she? Dear Charles said it to his companion, as they stood at the head of the companionway. Come up for air. Kinda soft and stupid and young, you know. Passive and at the same time troubling, challenging. He watched them for a time, then he added, Now, there goes the great illusion, par excellence. What's Taliaferro's trouble? Asked the Semitic man. The illusion that you can seduce women, which you can't. They just elect you. And then, God help you, the other added. And with words at that, the Achar continued. With words, he repeated savagely. Well, why not with words? One thing gets along with women as well as another. And you are of any sort to disparage words. You remember that species, all of whose actions are controlled by words. It's the word that overturns thrones in political parties and instigates spice crusades, not things. The thing is merely the symbol for the word. And more than that, think what a devil of a fix you and I'd be in were it not for words. Were we to lose our faith in words, I'd have nothing to do all day long, and you'd have to work or starve to death. He was silent for a while. Jenny yet slid and poised, pleasuring her soft young placidity. And, after all, his illusion is just as nourishing as yours, or mine either. I know, but joys of mine ain't quite so ridiculous as he is. How do you know they aren't? Fairchild had no reply, and the other continued. After all, it doesn't make any difference what you believe. Man is not only nourished by convictions, he is nourished by any conviction. Whatever you believe, you'll always annoy someone, but you yourself will follow and bleed and die for it in the face of law, hell, or high water. And those who die for causes will perish for any cause. The more tawdry it is, the quicker they flock to it, and be quite happy at it too. It's a provision of Providence to keep their time occupied. He sucked at his cigar, but it was dead. Do you know who is the happiest man in the world today? Mussolini, of course. And do you know who are next? The poor devils he will get killed with this Caesar illusion. Don't pity them, however. Were it not Mussolini and his illusion, it would be someone else at his cause. I believe it is some great cosmic scheme for fertilizing the earth, and it could be so much worse, he added. Who knows? They might all migrate to America and fall into the hands of Henry Ford. So don't you go around feeling superior to Taliaferro. I think his present illusion and its object are rather charming. Almost as charming as the consummation of it would be, which is more than you can say for yours. He held a match to his cigar. His sucking, intent face came abruptly out of the darkness, and as abruptly vanished again. He flipped the match toward the rail. And so do you, you poor emotional eunuch. So do you, despite that bastard of a surgeon and a stenographer, which you call your soul. So do you remember with regret kissing in the dark, and all the tender and sweet stupidity of young flesh? Hell, said Fairchild, let's have another drink. His friend was too kind, too tactful, to say I told you so. Mrs. Moria captured them as they reached the stairs. Here you are, she exclaimed brightly, twizzling their arms. Come, let's all dance a while. We need men. Eva has taken Mark away from Dorothy, and she has no partner. Come, Mr. Fairchild. Julius. We're coming back, Fairchild answered. We're going now to Hunter Gordon and the Major, and we'll all come right back. No, she said soothingly. We'll send the steward for them. Come now. I think we better go, Fairchild objected quickly. This steward has been working hard all day. He started out, I expect, and Gordon's kind of timid. He might not come if you send a servant for him. She released them doubtfully, staring at them with her round, astonished face. You will? To come back, Mr. Fairchild? Sure, Fairchild replied, descending hastily. Julius, Mrs. Morrow called after them helplessly. I'll bring them up in 10 minutes, the Semitic man promised, wallowing. Mrs. Warrior watched them until they had passed from view. Then she turned away. Jenny and Mr. Taliaferro were still dancing, as were Mrs. Wiseman and the ghostly poet. Miss Jameson, partnerless, sat at the card table playing solitaire. Mrs. Warrior looked on until the record played itself through. Then she said firmly, I think we'd better change partners among ourselves until the men come up. Mr. Taliaferro released Jenny obediently, and Jenny, released, stood around for a while. Then she drifted away and down the deck, passing that tall, ugly man leaning alone at the rail, and further along than he spoke from the shadow. Going to bed. Jenny paused, and turning her head toward the voice, she saw the faint glint of Pete's hat. She went on. Uh-huh, she replied. The moon was getting up, rising out of the dark water, a tarnished, implacable Venus. Her aunt came along soon, prowling, peering fretfully into shadowy chairs and obscure corners, implacable and tactless as a minor disease. My Lord, what have we got to do now? The niece moaned. She sighed. Sisula makes life real and earnest to everybody, that woman does. Dance, I guess, Pete answered. The vicious serrated rim of his head, where the moon fell upon it, glinted dully like a row of bile teeth, like a gaping lithograph of a charging shark. Guess so. Say I'm going to fade out. Stall her off some way, or run yourself would be better. Denise rose hurriedly. Salaam. See you tomorrow. Oh, you coming too? They stepped behind the companionway housing and flattened themselves against it, listening to Mrs. Maria's fretful prowling, and clutching Pete's hand for caution. Denise craned her neck around the corner. There's Dorothy, too, she whispered, and she withdrew her head, and they flattened themselves closer yet, clutching hands, while the two searchers passed, pausing to peer into every obscurity. But they were on, finally passing from sight, and the niece wiggled her fingers free and moved, and moving found that she had turned into Pete's arm, and against his dark shape and the reckless angle of his hat topping it, an interval like that between two fences ere they engage. Then Pete's arm moved with confidence, and his other arm came about her shoulders with a technique that was forcing her face upward. She was so still that he stopped again in a momentary flagging of confidence, and out of this lull a hard elbow came without force, but steadily under his chin. Try it on your saxophone, Pete, she told him without alarm. His hand moved again and caught her wrist, but she held her elbow jammed against his windpipe, increasing the pressure as he tried to remove her arm. Their bodies taut against each other and without motion. Someone approached again and he released her, but before they could dodge again around the corner, Miss Jameson saw them. "Who is that?" she said in her high, humorless voice. She drew nearer, peering. "Oh, I recognize Pete's head. Mrs. Moria wants you." She peered at them suspiciously. "What are your folks doing here?" "Hiding from Aunt Pat," the niece answered. "What you going to make us do now?" "Why, nothing. We ought to be more sociable, don't you think so? We never are all together, you know. Anyway, she wants to see Pete. Aren't you coming too?" "I'm going to bed. Pete can go if he wants to risk it, though." She turned away. Miss Jameson put her hand on Pete's sleeve. "You don't mind if I take Pete, then?" she persisted intensely. "I don't if he don't," Denise replied. She went on. "Good night." "That child ought to be spanked," Miss Jameson said viciously. She slid her hand through Pete's elbow. "Come on, Pete." The niece stood and rubbed one bare sole against the other's shin, hearing their footsteps retreating towards the lights and the fatuous reiteration of the Victrola. She rubbed her foot rhythmically up and down her shin, gazing out upon the water, where the moon had begun to spread her pallid and boneless hand. Her foot ceased its motion, and she remained motionless for a space. Then she stood on one leg and raised the other one. Under her fingers was a small hard bump, slightly feverish. "Gabriel's pants," she whispered. "They've found us again." But there was nothing for it except to wait until the time came. "And finds a lot of picked bones," she added aloud. She went on across the deck. At the stage she stopped again. It was David, standing there at the rail, his shirt blanching in the level moonlight against the dark shoreline. She went over beside him, silent on her bare feet. "Hello, David," she said quietly, putting her elbows on the rail beside his, and hunching her shoulders and crossing her legs as his were. "This would be a good night to be on our mountain, looking down at the lake and the little boats all lighted up, wouldn't it? I guess this time next summer we'll be there, won't we? And lots of other places where you went to. You know nice things, don't you? When we come back, I'll know nice things too." She gazed downward upon the dark, ceaseless water. It was never still, never the same, and on it moonlight was broken into little fleeting silver wings, rising and falling and changing. "Wish I were in it," she said, swimming around in the moonlight. "You won't forget about in the morning, will you?" "No," he told her, watching her cross thin arms and the cropped crown of her head. "Say," she looked up at him, "I tell you what, let's go in tonight." "Now?" "When the moon gets up more. Aunt Pat wouldn't let me go now anyway. But about 12, when they've gone to bed, What do you say?" He looked at her in such a strange fashion that she said sharply, "What's the matter?" "Nothing," he answered at last. "Well, I'll meet you about 12 o'clock then. I'll get Gus's bathing suit for you. Don't forget now." "No," he repeated, and when she reached the stairs to look back at him, he was still watching her in that strange manner, but she didn't puzzle over it long. End of section 25. Section 26 of Mosquitos. Second day, 10 p.m. Jenny had the cabin to herself. Mrs., that one whose name she always forgot, was still on deck. She could hear them talking, and Mr. Fairchild's jolly laugh came from somewhere, though he hadn't been upstairs when she left, and the muted nasal sound of the Victrola and thumping feet just over her head. Still dancing. Should she go back? She sat holding a hand glass, staring into it, but the hand glass was bland, reminding her that after all this was one night she didn't have to dance any more. And you have to dance so many nights. Tomorrow night, perhaps, it said. But I don't have to dance tomorrow night, she thought, staring into the glass and sitting utterly motionless. Its thin whine rose keening to an ecstatic point, and in the glass she saw it mar her throat with a small gray speck. She slapped savagely. It eluded her with a weary practiced skill, hanging fuzzily between her and the unshaded light. My Lord, why do we want to go to Mandeville? She thought. Her palms flashed, smacking cleanly, and Jenny examined her hand with distaste. Where did they carry so much blood, she wondered, rubbing her palm on the back of her stocking. And so young, too. I hope that's the last one. It must have been, for there was no sound save a small lapping whisper of water, any troubling faraway suggestion of brass, broken by a monotonous thumping of feet over her head. Dancing still. You really don't have to dance at all, thought Jenny, yawning into the glass, examining with interest the pink and seemingly endless curve of her gullet. When the door opened and the girl, Patricia, entered the room. She wore a raincoat over her pajamas, and Jenny saw her reflected face in the mirror. "Hello," she said. "Hello," the niece replied. "I thought you'd have stayed up there prancing around with them." "Lord," said Jenny, "you don't have to dance all your life, do you? You don't seem to be there." The niece thrust her hands into the raincoat pockets and stared about the small room. "Don't you close that window when you undress?" she asked, standing wide open like that. Jenny put the mirror down. "That window? I don't guess there's anybody out there this time of night." The niece went to the port and saw a pale sky bisected laterally by a dark rigidity of water. The moon spread her silver hand over it, a broadening path of silver, and in the path the water came alive ceaselessly, no longer rigid. "I guess not," she murmured. "The only man who could walk on water is dead. Which one is yours?" She threw off the raincoat and turned toward the two berths. The lower garment of her pajamas was tied about her waist with a man's frayed necktie. "Is he?" Jenny murmured with detachment. "That one," she answered vaguely, twisting her body to examine the back of one reverted leg. After a while she looked up. "That ain't mine. That's Mrs. What's-her-name's you're in." "Well, it don't make any difference." The niece lay flat, spreading her arms and legs luxuriously. "Give me a cigarette. Have you got any?" "I haven't got any. I don't smoke." Jenny's lid was satisfactory, so she ungriethed herself. "You don't smoke. Why don't you?" "I don't know," Jenny replied. "I just don't. Look around and see if Edith's got some somewhere." The niece raised her head. "Go on. Looking at them, she won't mind." Jenny hunted for cigarettes in a soft blonde futility. "Pete's got some," she remarked after a time. "He bought 20 packages just before we left town to bring on the boat." 20 packages? Good Lord, where do you think we were going? He must have been scared of shipwreck or something. "I guess so." "Ebriel's pants," the niece said. "That's all he brought, was it? Just cigarettes? What did you bring?" "I brought a comb." Jenny dragged her little soiled dress over her head. Her voice was muffled. "And some rouge." She shook out her drowsy gold hair and let the dress fall to the floor. "Pete's got some, though," she repeated, thrusting the dress beneath the dressing table with her foot. "I know the least," rejoined, "and so has Mr. Fairchild, and so has the steward, if Mark Frost hasn't borrowed 'em all. And I saw the captain smoking one too, but that's not doing me any good." "No," agreed Jenny placidly. Her undergarment was quite pink, enveloping her from shoulder to knee with ribbons and furbelows. She loosened a few of these and stepped sweetly and rosily out of it, casting it also onto the table. "You aren't going to leave them there, are you?" the niece asked. "Why don't you put 'em on the chair?" Mrs. Wiseman puts hers on the chair." "Why, you got here first. Why don't you take it? Or hang 'em on those hooks behind the door." "Hooks?" Jenny looked at the door. "Oh, they'll be all right there, I guess." She stripped off her stockings and laid them on the dressing table. Then she turned to the mirror again and picked up her comb. The comb passed through her fair soft hair with a faint sound, as of silk, and her hair lent to Jenny's divine body a halo like an angel's. The remote Victrola measured feet, and lapping of water came into the room. "You've got a funny figure," the niece remarked after a while, calmly watching her. "Funny?" repeated Jenny, looking up with soft belligerence. "It's no funnier than yours. At least my legs don't look like birds' legs." "Either do mine," the other replied with complacence, flat on her back. "Your legs are all right. I mean, you are kind of thick through the middle for your legs, kind of big behind for them." "Well, why not? I didn't make it like that, did I?" "Oh, sure, I guess it's all right if you like it to be that way." Without apparent effort, Jenny dislocated her hip and steered downward over her shoulder. Then she turned sideways and accepted the mute preferring of the mirror. Reassured, she said, "Sure, it's all right. I expect to be better than that in front some day. So do I when I have to. But what do you want one for?" "Lord," said Jenny, "I guess I'll have a whole litter of 'em. Besides, I think they're kind of cute, don't you?" The sound of the Victrola came down, melodious and nasal, and measured feet marked away the lapping of waves. The light was small and inadequate, sunk into the ceiling, and Jenny and the niece agreed that they were kind of cute and pink. Jenny was quite palpably on the point of coming to bed, and the other said, "Don't you wear night clothes?" "I can't wear that thing Mrs. What's-Her-Name lent me," Jenny replied. "You said you were going to lend me something, only you didn't. If I depended on you on this trip, I guess I'd be back yonder about 10 miles, trying to swim home." "That's right, but it doesn't make any difference what you sleep in, does it?" "Turn off the light." Light followed Jenny rosily as she crossed the room. It slid rosily upon her as she turned obediently toward the switch beside the door. The niece lay flat on her back, gazing at the unshaded globe. Jenny's angelic nakedness went beyond her vision, and suddenly she stared at nothing, with a vague orifice vaguely in the center of it, and beyond the orifice a pale moon-filled sky. Jenny's bare feet hissed just a little on the uncarpeted floor, and she came breathing softly in the dark, and her hand came out of the dark. The niece moved over against the wall. The round orifice in the center of the dark was obscured. Then it reappeared, and breathing with a soft London dampness, Jenny climbed gingerly into the berth. But she bumped her head anyway, lightly, and she exclaimed, "Ow," with placid surprise. The bunk heaved monstrously, creaking. The porthole vanished again. Then the berth became still, and Jenny sighed with a soft, explosive sound. Then she changed her position again, and the other said, "Be still, can't you?" thrusting at Jenny's roomless, naked abandon with her elbow. "I'm not fixed it," Jenny replied without rancor. "Well, get in then, and quit flopping around." Jenny became lax. "I'm fixed now," she said at last. She sighed again, a frank yawning sound. The slightly dulled feet thudded monotonously overhead, Outside in the pale darkness, water lapped at the hull of the yacht. The closed cabin emptied slowly of heat. Heat ebbed steadily away now that the light was off, and in it was no sound save that of their breathing. No other sound at all. "I hope that was the last one. The one I killed," Jenny murmured. "God, yes," the niece agreed. "This party is wheeling enough with just people on it. Say, how'd you like to be on a party with a boatful of Mr. Taliaferros? Which one is he?" "Why, don't you remember him?" "You sure ought to. He's that funny-talking little man that puts his hands on you. That dreadful polite one. I don't see how you could forget a man as polite as him." "Oh, yes," said Jenny, remembering, and the other said, "Say, Jenny, how about Pete?" Jenny became utterly still for a moment. Then she said innocently, "What about him?" "He's mad at you about Mr. Taliaferro, isn't he?" "Pete's all right, I guess." "You keep yourself all cluttered up with men, don't you?" the other asked curiously. "Well, you got to do something," Jenny defended herself. "Bunk," the niece said roughly. "Bunk. You like petting. That's the reason, don't you?" "Well, I don't mind," Jenny answered. "I've kind of got used to it," she explained. The niece expelled her breath in a thin, snorting sound, and Jenny repeated, "You've got to do something, haven't you?" "Oh, sweet adder or bunk," the niece said. In the darkness she made a gesture of disgust. "You women. That's the way Dorothy Jameson thinks about her too, I bet. You better look out. I think she's trying to take Peter away from you." "Oh, Pete's all right," Jenny repeated placidly. She lay perfectly still again. The water was a cool, dim sound. Jenny spoke, suddenly confidential. "Say, you know what she wants Pete to do?" "No, what?" asked the niece quickly. "Well, say what kind of girl is she? Do you know her very good?" "What does she want Pete to do?" the other insisted. Jenny was silent. Then she blurted in prim disapproval. "She wants Pete to let her paint him." "Yes," said then, "what?" "That's it. She wants Pete to let her paint him in a picture." "Well, that's the way she usually goes about getting that, I guess. What's wrong with it?" "Well, it's the wrong way to go about getting Pete. Pete's not used to that," Jenny replied in that prim tone. "I don't blame him for not wanting to waste his time that way. But wait next you and Pete's so surprised at the idea of it. Pete won't catch lead poisoning just from having his portrait painted. Well, it may be all right for folks like you all, but Pete says he wouldn't let any strange woman see him without any clothes on. He's not used to things like that." "Oh," remarked the niece. Then, "So that's the way she wants to paint him, is it?" "Why, that's the way they always do it, ain't it? In the nude." Jenny pronounced it nude. "Good Lord. Didn't you ever see a picture of anybody with clothes on? Where'd you get that idea from? From the movies?" Jenny didn't reply. Then she said suddenly, "Besides, the ones with clothes on are all old ladies, or mayors or something. Anyway, I thought—" "Thought what?" "Nothing," Jenny answered, and the other said, "Pete can get that idea right out of his head. Chances are she wants to paint him all regular and respectable, not to shock his modesty at all. I'll tell him so tomorrow." "Never mind," Jenny said quickly. "I'll tell him. You needn't to bother about it." "All right, whatever you like. Wish I had a cigarette." They lay quiet for a time. Outside water whispered against the hull. The Victrola was hushed temporarily, and the dancers had ceased. Jenny moved again onto her side, facing the other in the darkness. "Say," she asked, "what's your brother making?" "Gosh, why don't you ask him yourself?" "I did, only—" "What?" "Only he didn't tell me. At least, I don't remember. What did he say when you asked him?" Jenny mused briefly. "He kissed me before I knew it, and he kind of patted me back here and told me to call again later, because he was in conference or something like that." "Gabriel's pants," the niece murmured. Then she said sharply, "Look here. You leave Josh alone, you hear? Hadn't you got enough with Pete and Mr. Taliaferro without fooling with children? I'm not going to fool with any children. Oh, please don't. Let Josh alone anyway. She moved her arm, arching her elbow against Jenny's soft nakedness. Over some. Gee, woman, you sure do feel indecent. Get over on your side a little, can't you? Jenny moved away, rolling onto her back again, and they lay quiet, side by side in the dark. Say, remarked Jenny presently, Mr. and polite man. Taliaferro, the other prompted. Taliaferro, I wonder if he's got a car. I don't know. You better ask him. What do you keep on asking me what people are making or what they've got for? Taxicabs are best, I think, Jenny continued, unruffled. Sometimes when they have cars, they don't have anything else. They just take you riding. I don't know, Denise repeated. Say, she said suddenly. When was that you said to her in this afternoon? Jenny said, oh. She breathed placidly and regularly for a while. Then she remarked, I thought you were there, around that corner. Yes, what was it? Say it again. Jenny said it again. Denise repeated it after her. What does it mean? I don't know. I just happen to remember it. I don't know what it means. It sounds good, the other said. You didn't think it up yourself, did you? No, it was a fellow told it to me. There was 2 couples of us at the market one night getting coffee. Me and Pete and a girlfriend of mine and another fellow. We had been to Mandeville on the boat that day, swimming and dancing. Say, there was a man drowned at Mandeville that day. Pete and Thelma, my girlfriend, and Roy, this girlfriend of mine's fellows, saw it. I didn't see it because I wasn't with them. I didn't go in bathing with them. It was too sunny. I don't think blondes ought to expose themselves to hot sun like brunettes, do you? Why not? But what about? Oh, yes. Anyway, I didn't go in swimming where the man got drowned. I was waiting for them, and I got to talking to a funny man. A little kind of black man. A nigger? No, he was a white man, except he was awful sunburned and kind of shabby dressed. No necktie and hat. Say, he said some funny things to me. He said I had the best digestion he ever saw. And he said if the straps of my dress was to break, I'd devastate the country. He said he was a liar by profession, and he made good money at it. Enough to own a Ford as soon as he got it paid out. I think he was crazy, not dangerous, just crazy. Denise lay quiet. She said contemplatively, Do you look like they feed you on bread and milk and put you to bed at sunset every day? What was his name? Did he tell you? She asked suddenly. Yes, it was. Jenny pondered a while. I remembered it because he was such a funny kind of man. It was Walker or Foster or something. Walker or Foster? Well, which one was it? It must be Foster because I remembered it by it again with the F like my girlfriend's middle name. Frances. Thelma Frances. Only she don't use both of them. Only I don't think it was Foster because... You don't remember it then? Yes, I do. Wait. Oh, yes, I remember. Faulkner. That was it. Faulkner? Denise pondered in turn. Never heard of him, she said at last with finality. And he was the one that told you that thing? No, it was after that, when we had come back to N.O. That crazy man was on the phone coming back. He got to talking to Pete and Roy while me and Thelma was fixing up downstairs, and he danced with Thelma. He wouldn't dance with me because he said he didn't dance very well, and so he had to keep his mind on the music while he danced. He said he could dance with either Roy or Thelma or Pete, but he couldn't dance with me. I think he was crazy, don't you? It all sounds crazy the way you tell it. But what about the one that said that to you? Oh, yes. Well, we was at the market. There was a big crowd there because it was Sunday night, say. And these other fellows was there. One of them was a snappy-looking fellow, and I kind of looked at him. Pete had stopped in a place to get some cigarettes, and me and Thelma and Roy was crowded and was a lot of folks having coffee. So I kind of looked at this good-looking fellow. Yes, you kind of looked at him. Go on. All right. And so this good-looking fellow crowded in behind me and started talking to me. There was a man in between me and Roy, and this fellow that was talking to me said, "Is he with you?" Talking about the man sitting next to me, and I said, "No, I didn't know who he was." And this fellow said, "How about coming out with him because he had his car parked outside? Pete's brother has a lot of cars. One of them is the same as Pete's." And then, "Oh, yes." And I said, "Where will we go? Because my old man didn't like for me to go out with strangers." And the fellow said he wasn't a stranger, that anybody could tell me who some name was. I forgot what was he said his name was. And I said he better ask Pete if I could go. And he said, "Who was Pete?" Well, there was a big man standing near where we was. He was big as a stevedore, and just then this big man happened to look at me again. He looked at me a minute, and I kind of knew that he'd look at me again pretty soon. So I told this fellow talking to me that he was Pete, and when the big man looked somewhere else a minute, this fellow said that to me. And then the big man looked at me again, and the fellow that said that to me kind of went away. So I got up and went to where Thelma and Roy was, and pretty soon Pete came back, and that's how I run it. Well, it sure sounds good. I wonder. Say, let me say it sometimes, will you? All right, Jenny agreed. You can have it. Say, what's that you keep telling your aunt? Something about pulling up the sheet or something. The niece told her. That sounds good too, Jenny said magnanimously. Does it? I tell you what. You let me use yours sometime, and you can take mine. All about it. All right, Jenny agreed again. It's a trade. Water lapped and whispered ceaselessly in the pale darkness. The curve of the low ceiling directly over the berth lent a faint sense of oppression to the cabin. But this sense of oppression faded out into the comparatively greater spaciousness of the room, of the darkness with the round orifice vaguely in the center of it. The moon was higher, and the lower curve of the brass rim of the port was now a thin silver sickle, like a new moon. Jenny moved again, turning against the other side, breathing ineffably across the niece's face. The niece lay with Jenny's passive nakedness against her arm, and moving her arm outward from the elbow, she slowly stroked the back of her hand along the swell of Jenny's flank. Slowly, back and forth, while Jenny lay supine and receptive as a cat. Slowly, back and forth and back. I like flesh, the niece murmured, warm and smooth, which I'd licked in Rome, oiled gladiators. Jenny, she said abruptly, are you a virgin? Of course I am, Jenny answered immediately, in a startled tone. She lay for a moment in lax astonishment. She said, yes, of course I am. She brooded in passive surprise. Then her body lost its laxness. Say. Well, the niece agreed judiciously. I guess it's about what I'd have said myself. Say, demanded Jenny, thoroughly aroused. What did you ask me that for? Just to see what you'd say. It doesn't make any difference, whether you are or not. I know lots of girls that say they're not. I don't think all of them are lying either. Maybe you don't come to some folks, Jenny rejoined primly, but I don't approve of it. I think a girl loses a man's respect by prom. I don't approve of it, that's all. And I don't think you had any right to ask me. Good Lord, you sound like a Girl Scout or something. Don't Pete ever try to persuade you otherwise? Say, what are you asking me questions like that for? I just wanted to see what you'd say. I don't think it's anything to tear your shirt over. You're too easily shocked, Jenny, the niece informed her. Well, who wouldn't be? If you want to know what folks say when you ask things like that, why don't you ask them to yourself? Did anybody ever ask you if you were one? Not that I know of, but I would. Well, are you? The niece lay perfectly still a moment. Am I what? Are you a virgin? Why, of course I am, she answered sharply. She raised herself on her elbow. Say, look here. Well, that's what I'd have said myself, Jenny responded, with placid malice from the darkness. The niece poised her tense elbow above Jenny's sweet regular breathing. Anyway, what biz? You asked me so quick, she rushed on. I wasn't even thinking about being asked something like that. Either was I. You passed me quicker than I asked you. But that was different. We were talking about you being one. We were not even thinking about me being one. You asked it so quick I had to say that. It wasn't fair. So did I have to say what I said? It was as fair for you as it was for me. No, it was different. I had to say I wasn't quick like that. Well, I'll ask it when you're not surprised then. Are you? The niece lay quiet for a time. You mean, sure enough? Yes, Jenny breathed her warm, intent breath across the other's face. The niece lay silent again. After a time she said, Hell. And then, yes, I am. It's not worth lying about. That's what I think, Jenny agreed smugly. She became placidly silent in the darkness. The other waited a moment, then said sharply, Well, are you one? Sure I am. Sure enough. You said sure enough, didn't you? Sure I am, Jenny repeated. You're not playing fair, the niece accused. I told you. Well, I told you too. Honest, you swear? Sure I am, Jenny said again with her glib and devastating placidity. Then he said, Hell. She snorted thinly. They lay quiet side by side. They were quiet on deck too, but it seemed as though there still lingered in the darkness a thin stubborn ghost of syncopation and budding tireless feet. Jenny wiggled her free toes with pleasure. Presently she said, You're bad, ain't you? No reply. You've got a good figure, too, Jenny offered conciliatory. I think you've got a right sweet little shape. But the other refused to be cajoled. Jenny sighed again ineffably, her milk and honey breath. She said, Your brother's a college boy, ain't he? I know some college boys. Tulane. I think college boys are cute. They don't dress as well as Pete. Sloppy. She mused for a time. I wore frat print ones for a couple of days. I guess your brother belongs to a Tony. Gus belongs to one of these jerkwater clubs. I guess not. He's a Yale man. He will be next month, that is. I'm going with him. They don't take every Tom, Dick, and Harry that shows up there. You have to wait until sophomore year. But Gus is going to work for a senior society anyhow. He don't think much of fraternities. Gee, each will give him a laugh he could hear you. Wow, I didn't know. It seems to be one thing you join is about like another. What's he going to get by joining the one he's going to join? You don't get anything, stupid, so just join it. Jenny pondered this a while. And you have to work to join it? 3 years, and only a few make it then. And if you do make it, you don't get anything except a little button or something? Good Lord. Say you know what I'm going to tell him tomorrow. I'm going to tell him he'd better hold up the sheet. What's the rest of it? Oh, shut up and go over on your side, the niece said sharply, turning her back. You don't understand anything about it. I sure don't, Jenny agreed, rolling the way in onto her other side. And they lay with their backs to each other and their behinds just touching, as children do. 3 years. Good Lord. Fairchild had not returned, but she had known they would not. She was not even surprised, and so once more her party had evolved into interminable cards. Mrs. Wiseman herself, Miss Talia Farrell, and Mark. By craning her neck, she could see Dorothy Jameson's veiled, humorless intentness and the tawdry sophistication of Jenny's young man, where they swung their legs from the roof of the wheelhouse. The moon was getting up, and Pete's straw hat was a dull, implacable gleam slanted above the red eye of his eternal cigarette. And yes, there was that queer, shy, shabby Mr. Gordon, mooming alone as usual. And again she felt a stab of reproof for having neglected him. At least the others seemed to be enjoying the voyage, however trying they might be to one another. But what could she do for him? He was so difficult, so ill at ease whenever she extended herself for him. Mrs. Maury arose. For a while, she explained, Mr. Gordon, the trials of a hostess, you know. You might play dummy until No, wait. She called Dorothy with saccharine insistence, and presently Miss Jameson responded. Won't you take my hand for a short time? I'm sure the young gentleman will excuse you. I'm sorry, Miss Jameson called back. I have a headache. Please excuse me. Go on, Mrs. Maury, Mrs. Wiseman said. We can pass the time until you come back. We've got used to sitting around. Yes, do, Mr. Taliaferro added. We understand. Mrs. Maury looked over to where Gordon still leaned his tall body upon the rail. I really must, she explained again. It's at your comfort to have a few on whom I can depend. Yes, do, Mr. Taliaferro repeated. When she had gone, Mrs. Wiseman said, Let's play red doll for pennies. I've got a few dollars left. She joined him quietly. He glanced his gaunt face at her, glanced away. How quiet, how peaceful it is, she began, undeterred, leaning beside him and gazing also out across the restless slumber of water, upon which the worn loom spread a ceaseless peacock's tail, like a train of silver sequins. In the yet level rays of the moon, the man's face was bare and cavernous, haughty and inhuman almost. He doesn't get enough to eat, she knew suddenly and infallibly. It's like a silver fawn's face, she thought. But he is so difficult, so shy. So few of us take time to look inward and contemplate ourselves, don't you think? It's the life we lead, I suppose. Only he who creates has not lost the art of this, of making his life complete by living within himself. Don't you think so, Mr. Gordon? Yes, he answered shortly. Beyond the dimensionless curve of the deck on which he stood, he could see, forward and downward, the stem of the yacht, a pure triangle of sheet of white with small waves lapping at its horizontal leg, breaking and flashing each with its particle of shattered moonlight, making a ceaseless small whispering. Mrs. Maury moved her hands in her gesture. Moonlight smoldered greenly amid her rings. To live within yourself, to be sufficient unto yourself. There is so much unhappiness in the world. She sighed again with astonishment. To go through life keeping yourself from becoming involved in it. To gather inspiration for your work. Ah, Mr. Gordon, how lucky you who create are. As for we others, the best we can hope is that sometime, somewhere, somehow, we may be fortunate enough to furnish that inspiration, or the setting for it at least. But, after all, that would be an end in itself, I think, to know that one had given her might to art, no matter how humble the might or the giver. The humble laborer, Mr. Gordon, she too has her place in the scheme of things. She too has given something to the world, has walked where gods have trod. And I do so hope that you will find on this voyage something to compensate you for having been taken away from your work. Yes, said Gordon again, staring at her with his arrogant, uncomfortable stare. The man looks positively uncanny, she thought, with a queer, cold feeling within her. Like an animal, a beast of some sort. Her own gaze fluttered away, and despite herself she glanced quickly over her shoulder to the reassuring group at the card table. Dorothy's and Jenny's young man's legs swung innocent and rhythmic from the top of the wheelhouse, and as she looked, Pete snapped his cigarette outward and into the dark water, twinkling. But to be a world in oneself, to regard the antics of man as one were a puppet show. Ah, Mr. Gordon, how happy you must be. Yes, he repeated. Sufficient unto himself in the city of his arrogance, in the marble tower of his loneliness and pride, and she coming into the dark sky of his life like a star, like a flame, oh bitter and new. Somewhere within him was a far dreadful laughter, unheard. His whole life was become toothed with jeering laughter, and he faced the old woman again, putting his hand on her and turning her face upward into the moonlight. Mrs. Moria knew utter fear, not fright, fear, a passive and tragic condition like a dream. She whispered, "Mr. Gordon," but made no sound. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said harshly, staring at her face as a surgeon might. "Tell me about her," he commanded. "Why aren't you her mother? So you could tell me how conceiving her must have been, how carrying her in your loins must have been." "Mr. Gordon," she implored through her dry lips, without making a sound. His hand moved over her face, learning the bones of her forehead and eye sockets and nose through her flesh. "Is something in your face? Something behind all this silliness?" he went on, in his cold, level voice, while the interval of frozen time refused to pass. His hand pinched the loose sack of flesh around her mouth, slid along the fading rind of her cheek and jaw. "I suppose you've had what you call your sorrows too, haven't you?" "Mr. Gordon," she said at last, finding her voice. He released hers abruptly and stood over her, gaunt and ill-nourished and arrogant in the moonlight, while she believed she was going to faint, hoping vaguely that he would make some effort to catch her when she did, knowing that he would not do so. But she didn't faint, and the moon spread her silver and boneless hand on the water, and the water lapped and lapped at the pure dreaming howl of the Nausicaa with a faint whispering sound. End of section 26. Section 27 of Mosquitos. Second day, 11 p.m. "Do you know," said Mrs. Wiseman, rising and speaking across her chair, "what I'm going to do if this lasts another night? I'm going to ask Julius to exchange with me and let me get drunk with Dawson and Major Ears in his place. And so, to one and all, good night." "Aren't you going to wait for Dorothy?" Mark Forrest asked. She glanced toward the wheelhouse. "No, I guess Pete can look out for himself," she replied, and left them. The moon cast a deep shadow on the western side of the deck, and near the companionway, someone lay in a chair. She slowed, passing. "Mrs. Moria," she said, "we wondered what had become of you. Been asleep?" Mrs. Moria sat up slowly, as a very old person moves. The younger woman bent down to her, quickly solicitous. "You don't feel well, do you?" "Is it time to go below?" Mrs. Moria asked, raising herself more briskly. "Our bridge game. You all had beat us too badly, but can't I?" No, Mrs. Moria objected quickly, a trifle testily. "It's nothing. I was just sitting here enjoying the moonlight." "We thought Mr. Gordon was with you." Mrs. Moria shuddered. "These terrible men," she said with an attempt at lightness. "These artists." "Gordon, too. I thought he had escaped Dawson and Julius." "Gordon, too," Mrs. Moria replied. She rose. "Come, I think we'd better go to bed." She shuddered again, as with cold. Her flesh seemed to shake despite her, and she took the younger woman's arm, clinging to it. "I do feel a little tired," she confessed. "The first few days are always trying, don't you think? But we have a very nice party, don't you think so?" "An awfully nice party," the other agreed without irony. "But we are all tired. We'll all feel better tomorrow, I know." Mrs. Moria descended the stairs slowly, heavily. The other steadied her with her strong hand, and opening Mrs. Moria's door, she reached in and found the light button. "There. Would you like anything before you go to bed?" No, Mrs. Moria answered, entering and averting her face quickly. She crossed the room and busied herself at the dressing table, keeping her back to the other. "Thank you. Nothing. I shall go to sleep at once, I think. I always sleep well on the water. Good night." Mrs. Wiseman closed the door. "I wonder what it is," she thought. "I wonder what happened to her." She went on along the passage to her own door. "Something did. Something happened to her," she repeated, putting her hand on the door and turning the knob. End of section 27. Section 28 of Mosquitos. Second day, midnight. The moon had got higher, that worn and bloodless one, old and a little weary and shedding her tired silver on yacht and water and shore. And the yacht, the deck and its fixtures, was passionless as a dream upon the shifting, silvered wings of water when she appeared in her bathing suit. She stood for a moment in the doorway until she saw movement in his white shirt, where he half turned on the coil of rope where he sat. Her lifted hand blanched slimly in the hushed treachery of the moon, a gesture, and her bare feet made no sound on the deck. "Hello, David. I'm on time, like I said. Where's your bathing suit?" "I didn't think you would come," he said, looking up at her. "I didn't think you meant it." "Why not?" she asked. "Good Lord, what did I want to tell you I was for if I wasn't?" "I don't know. I just thought, you sure are brown, seeing it in the moonlight." "Yes, I've got a good one," she agreed. "Where's your bathing suit? Why haven't you got it on?" "You are going to get one for me, you said." She stared at his face in consternation. "That's right. I sure was. I forgot it. Wait, maybe I can wake Josh up and get it. It won't take long. You wait here." He stopped her. "It'll be all right. Don't bother about it tonight. I'll get it some other time." "No, I'll get it. I want somebody to go in with me." "You wait." "No, never mind. I'll row the boat for you." "Say, you still don't believe I meant it, do you?" She examined him curiously. "All right then. I guess I'll have to go in by myself. You can row the boat anyway. Come on." He fetched the oars and they got in the tender and cast off. "Only I wish you had a bathing suit," she repeated from the stern. "I'd rather have somebody to go in with me. Couldn't you go in your clothes or something? Say, I'll turn my back, and you can take off your clothes and jump in. How about that?" "I guess not," he answered in alarm. "I guess I better not do that." "Shucks, I wanted somebody to go swimming with me. It's not any fun by myself." "Take off your shirt and pants then, and go in your underclothes. That's almost like a bathing suit. I went in yesterday in Josh's. I'll row the boat for you while you go in," he repeated. Then he said shucks again. David pulled steadily on upon the mooned and shifting water. Little waves slapped the bottom of the boat, lightly as it rose and fell, and behind them the yacht was pure and passionless as a dream against the dark trees. "I just love tonight," the niece said. "It's like we owned everything." She lay flat on her back on the stern seat, propping her heels against the gunwale. David pulled rhythmically. The motion of the boat was a rhythm that lent to the moon and stars, swinging up and down beyond the daybreak simplicity of her propped knees, a motion slow and soothing as a huge tree in a wind. "How far do you want to go?" he asked presently. "I don't care," she answered, gazing into the sky. He rowed on. The oarlocks thumping and measured, and she turned onto her belly, dragging her arm in the water, while small bubbles of silver fire clung to her arm, broke away reluctantly, and swam slowly to the surface, disappeared. Little casual swells slapped the bottom of the boat lightly and slid along beside the hull, mooned with bubbling fire. She slid her legs overside and swung from the stern of the boat, dragging through the water. He pulled on a few strokes. "I can't row with you hanging near," he said. Her true hands vanished from the gunwale, and her dark head vanished. But when he slewed the boat sharply and half rose, she reappeared, waving a faint shower of silver drops from her head. The moon slid and ran on her alternate arms, and before her spread a fan of silver lines, shifting and spreading and fading. "Gee," she said. Her voice came rolling along the water, not loud but still distinct. Little waves lapped at it. "It's grand, warm as warm. You better come in." Her head vanished again. He saw her sickling legs as they vanished, and once more she raged, shouted silver from her flung head. She swam up to the boat. "Come on in, David," she insisted. "Take off your shirt and pants and jump in. I'll swim out and wait for you. Come on now, she commanded. So he removed his outer garments sitting in the bottom of the boat and slid quickly and modestly into the water. Isn't it grand, she called to him. Come on out here. We better not get too far from the boat, he said cautiously. She ain't got any anchor, you know. We can catch it. It won't drift fast. Come on out here, and I'll race you back to it. He swam out to where her dark wet head awaited him. I bet I beat you, she challenged. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, go. And she did beat him, and with a single unceasing motion she slid upward and into the tender, and stood erect for the moonlight to slide over her in hushed silver. I'll plunge for distance with you, she now challenged. David hung by his hands, submerged to his neck. She waited for him to get into the skiff then, she said. You can dive, can't you? But he still clung to the gunwale, looking up at her. Come on, David, she said sharply. Are you timid or what? I'm not going to look at you if you don't want me to. So he got into the boat, modestly peeping his back to her. But even his wet, curious garment could not make ridiculous the young, lean splendor of him. I don't see what you are ashamed of. You've got a good physique, she told him, tall and hard-looking. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, go! But soon she was content to float on her back and recover breath, while he trod water beside her. Little hands of water laughed at her, interfering upon her face, and she breathed deeply, closing her eyes against the bland, waning boom. I'll hold you off a while, he offered, putting his hand under the small of her back. You sure can, she said, holding herself motionless. Is it hard to do? Let me see if I can hold you up. This water is different from seawater. You don't hardly sink in seawater if you want to. She let her legs sink and he lay obediently on his back. I can hold you up, can't I? Say, can you carry somebody in the water like lifesavers? A little, he admitted, and she rolled again onto her back, and he showed her how it was done. Then she must try it herself, and he submitted with dubious resignation. Her hard young arm gripped him chokingly across his throat, jamming his windpipe, and she lunged violently forward, threshing for thanks. He jerked up his arms to remove her struggling elbow, and his head went under, open-mouthed. He fought free of her and reappeared gasping. Her concerned face came to him. She tried to hold him up, unnecessarily. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to duck you. It's all right, he said, coughing and strangling. I didn't do it right, did I? Are you all right now? She watched him anxiously, trying to support him. I'm all right, he repeated. You had the wrong hold, he explained, treading water. You had me around the neck. Gee, I thought I was doing it right. I'll do it right this time. I guess we've got to wait and practice it in shallow water sometime, he demurred quickly. Why? All right, she agreed. I think I know how now. I guess I had better learn good first, though. I'm awful sorry I strangled you. It don't hurt anymore. I don't notice it. But it was such a dumb thing to do. I'll learn it good next time. You know how now, all right. You just got the wrong hold that time. Try it again. See if you don't know it. You don't mind? She said with quick joy. I won't catch you wrong this time. No, I might duck you again. I'd better learn it first. Sure you won't, he said. You know how now. You won't hurt me. Try it. He turned onto his back. Gee, David, she said. He slid her arm carefully across his chest and beneath his opposite arm. That's right. Now I'm going. She held him carefully, intent on doing it correctly, while he encouraged her. But their progress was damnably slow. The boat seemed miles away, and so much of her effort was needed to keep her own head above water. Soon she was breathing faster, gulping air and then closing her mouth against the water, her thrusting arms scrolled up against her face. I will do it. I will do it, she told herself. But it was so much harder than it had looked. The skiff rose and fell against the stars, and mooned water bubbled about her. It would take more effort, or she'd have to give up, and she'd drown before that. The arm that held him was numb, and she swam harder, shifting her grip, and again her hard elbow shut with strangling force upon his windpipe, but he was expecting it without moving his body. He twisted his head aside, and filled his lungs, and shut his mouth and eyes. Soon she ceased swimming, and her arms slid down again, holding him up, and he emptied his lungs and opened his eyes to remark the gunwale of the tender, rising and falling against the sky above his head. "I did make it," she gasped. "I did make it." "Are you all right?" she asked, panting. "I sure did it, David. I know I could." She clung to the skiff, resting her head upon her hands. "I thought for a while when I had to change my hold that I was doing it wrong again. But I did it right, didn't I?" The remote chill stars swung over them, and the decaying disk of the moon, over the empty world in which they clung by their hands, side by side. "I'm pretty near all in," she admitted. "It's pretty hard," he agreed, "until you've practiced a lot. I'll hold you up until you get your breath." He put his arm around her under the water. "I'm not at all the way winded," she protested, but by degrees she relaxed until he supported her whole weight, feeling her heart bumping against his palm, while she clung to the gunwale, resting her bowed head upon her hands. And it was like he had been in a dark room, and all of a sudden the lights had come on. Simple, like that. It was like one morning when he was in a bunch of hobos, riding a freight into San Francisco, and the bulls had jumped them, and they had had to walk in. Along the waterfront it was, and there were a lot of boats in the water, kind of rocking back and forth at anchor. He could see reflections of boats and of the piles of the wharves in the water, wavering back and forth, and after a while, dawn had come up out of the smoke of the city, like a sound you couldn't hear, and a lot of yellow and pink had come onto the water, where the boats were rocking, and around the piles of the wharf little yellow lines seemed to come right up out of the water, and pretty soon they were gulls looking like they had pink and yellow feathers, slanting and wheeling around. And it was like there was a street in a city, a street with a lot of trash in it. But pretty soon he was out of the street and in a place where trees were. It must be spring because the trees were not exactly bare, and yet they didn't exactly have leaves on them. And there was a wind coming through the trees, and he stopped and heard music somewhere. It was like he had just waked up and a wind with music in it was coming across green hills, brave in a clean dawn. Simple, like that. She moved at last against his arm. "Maybe I can climb in now. You better give me a push, I guess." His hand found her knee, slid down, and she raised her foot to his palm. He saw her flat boy's body against the stars rising, and she was in the boat, leaning down to him. "Catch my hand," she said, extending them. But for a time he didn't move at all, and only clung to the gunwale, and looked up at her with an utter longing, like that of a dog. Mrs. Moria lay in bed in her darkened room. There was a port just over the bed, and a long pencil of moonlight came slanting through it, shattering upon the floor and filling the room with a cold, disseminated radiance. Upon the chair, vaguely, her clothes, a shapeless familiar mass, comforting, and about her the intimate familiarity of her own possessions, her toilet things, her clothing, her very particular odor with which she had grown so familiar that she no longer noticed it at all. She lay in bed. Her bed, especially built for her, was the most comfortable on board, surrounded, lapped in security and easeful things, walled and secured within the bland, hushed plains of the bulkheads. A faint, happy sound came into her, little tongues of water lapping ceaselessly alongside the yacht, against her yacht, that island of security that was always waiting to transport her comfortably beyond the rumors of the world and its sorrows, and beyond the yacht, space, water and sky and darkness and silence, a worn cold moon, neither merry nor sad. Mrs. Moria, lay in her easy bed within her comfortable room, weeping long shuddering sobs, a passive, terrible hysteria without a sound. This morning waked in a quiet, fathomless mist. It was upon the world of water unstirred. Soon the first faint wind of morning would thin it away, but now it was about the Nausicaa, timelessly. The yacht was a thick jewel swaddled in soft grey wool, while in the wool, somewhere dawn was like a suspended breath. The first morning of time might well be beyond this mist, and trumpets preliminary to a golden flourish. And held in suspension in it might be heard yet the voices of the far gods on the first morning saying, "It is well, let there be light." A short distance away, a shadow, a rumor, a more palpable thickness. This was the shore. The water fading out of the mist became as a dark metal in which the Nausicaa was rigidly fixed, and the yacht was motionless, swaddled in mist like a fat jewel. End of section 28. Section 29 of Mosquitos. Section 29. The third day. This morning waked in a quiet, fathomless mist. It was upon the world of water unstirred. Soon the first faint wind of morning would thin it away, but now it was about the Nausicaa timelessly. The yacht was a thick jewel, swaddled in soft grey wool, while in the wool somewhere, dawn was like a suspended breath. The first morning of time might well be beyond this mist, and trumpets, preliminary to a golden flourish, and held in suspension in it, might be heard yet the voices of the far gods on the first morning saying, "It is well, let there be light." A short distance away, a shadow, a rumor, a more palpable thickness. This was the shore. The water fading out of the mist became as a dark metal in which the Nausicaa was rigidly fixed, and the yacht was motionless, swaddled in mist like a fat jewel. 5 o'clock. Up from the darkness of the companionway the niece came, naked and silent as a ghost. She stood for a space, but there was no sound from anywhere, and she crossed the deck and stopped again at the rail, breathing the soft, chill mist into her lungs, feeling the mist swaddling her firm, simple body with a faint, lingering chillness. Her legs and arms were so tan that naked, she appeared to wear a bathing suit of a startling white. She climbed the rail. The tender rocked a little under her, causing the black, motionless water to come alive, making faint sounds. Then she slid over the stern and swam out into the mist. The water divided with oily reluctance, closing again behind her with scarce a ripple. Here at the water level, she could see nothing save a grayness and flaccid, disturbed tongues of water lapping into it, leaving small, fleeting gaps between mist and water before the mist filled them again, silently as settling wings. The hull of the yacht was a vague thing, a thing felt, known, rather than seen. She swam slowly, circling the place where she knew it should be. She swam slowly and steadily, trying to keep her approximate distance from the yacht, by instinct. But consciously, this was hard to do. Consciously, in this vague, restricted immensity, this limitless vagueness whose center was herself, the yacht could be in any direction from her. She paused and trod water, while little tongues of water kissed her face, lapping against her lips. "It's on my right," she told herself. "It's on my right, over there." Not fear, merely a faint unease, an exasperation. But to reassure herself, she swam a few strokes in that direction. The mist neither thickened nor thinned. She trod water again, and water licked at her face soundlessly. "Damn your fool soul," she whispered, and at that moment, a round, huge thing like a dead, lidless eye watched her suddenly from the mist, and there came a faint sound from somewhere in the mist above her head. In 2 strokes, she touched the hull of the yacht, a vindication, and she knew a faint pride and a touch of relief as she swam along the hull and circled the stern. She grasped the gunwale of the tender and hung there for a while, getting her wind back. That faint sound came again from the deck, a movement, and she spoke into the mist. "David?" The mist took the word, sweeping it lightly against the hull. Then it rebounded again, and the mist absorbed it. But he had heard, and he appeared vaguely above her at the rail, looking down at her where she hung in the water. "Go away so I can get out," she said. He didn't move, and she added, "I haven't got on a bathing suit. Go away a minute, David." But he didn't move. He leaned over the rail, looking at her with a dumb and utter longing, and after a while she slid quickly and easily into the tender. And still he remained motionless, making no move to help her as her grave, simple body came swiftly aboard the yacht. "Be back in a minute," she said over her shoulder, and her startling white bathing suit sped across the deck and out of the ken of his dog's eyes. The mist, without thinning, was filling with light, an imminence of dawn like a glory, a splendor of trumpets unheard. Her minute was 3 minutes. She reappeared in her little colored linen dress, her dark, coarse hair still damp, carrying her shoes and stockings in her hand. He hadn't moved at all. "Well, let's get going," she said. She looked at him impatiently. "Aren't you ready yet?" He stirred at last, watching her with the passive abjectness of a dog. "Come on," she said sharply. "Haven't you got this stuff for breakfast yet? What's the matter with you, David? Snap out of your trance." She examined him again, with a sober impersonality. "You didn't believe I was going to do it. Is that it? Or are you backing out yourself? Come on, say so now if you want to call it off." She came nearer, examining his face with her grave, opaque eyes. She extended her hand. "David!" He took her hand slowly, looking at her, and she grasped his hand and shook his arm sharply. "Wake up. Say, you haven't... Oh, come on, let's get some stuff for breakfast and beat it. We haven't got all day." He followed her, and in the galley she switched on the light and chose a flat box of bacon and a loaf of bread, putting them on a table and delving again among boxes and lockers and shelves. "Have you got matches? A knife?" she asked over her shoulder. "And where are oranges? Let's take some oranges. I love oranges, don't you?" She turned her head to look at him. His hand was just touching her sleeve, so diffidently that she had not felt it. She turned suddenly, putting the oranges down, and put her arms about him, hard and firm and sexless, drawing his cheek down to her sober, moist kiss. She could feel his hammering, erratic heart against her breast, could hear it surging in the silence, almost as though it were in her own body. His arms tightened, and he moved his head, seeking her mouth, but she evaded him with a quick movement, without reproof. No, not that. Everybody does that." She strained him against her hard body again, then released him. "Come on now. Have you got everything?" She examined the shelves again, finding at last a small basket. It was filled with damp lettuce, but she dumped the lettuce out and put her things in it. "You take my shoes. They'll go in your pocket, won't they?" She crumpled her limp blonde stockings into her slippers and gave them to him. Then she picked up the basket and snapped off the light. Day was a nearer thing yet, though it was not quite come. Though the mist had not thinned, the yacht was visible from stem to stern, asleep like a gull with folded wings. And against the hull, the water sighed a long awakening sigh. The shoreline was darker, a more palpable vagueness in the mist. "Say," she remarked, stopping suddenly, "how are we going to get ashore? I forgot that. We don't want to take the tender." "Swim," he suggested. Her dark, damp head came just to his chin, and she mused for a time in a sober consternation. "Isn't there some way we can go in the tender and then pull it back to the yacht with a rope? Yes, we can do that. Well, you get a rope then. Snap into it. When he returned with a coiled line, she was already in the tender with the oars, and she watched with interest while he passed the rope around a stanchion and brought both ends into the boat with him and made one of the ends fast to the ring bolt in the stem of the skiff. Then she caught the idea, and she sat and paid out the line while he pulled away for shore. Soon they beached, and she sprang ashore, still holding the free end of the rope. How were we going to keep the tender from pulling the rope back around that post and getting a loose? She asked. I'll show you, he answered, and she watched him while he tied the oars and the rowlocks together with the free end of the line and wedged them beneath the thwarts. That'll hold, I guess. Somebody'll be sure to see her pretty soon, he added, and prepared to draw the skiff back to the yacht. Wait a minute, she said. She mused gravely, gazing at the dim, shadowy yacht. Then she borrowed matches from him, and sitting on the gunwale of the tender, she tore a strip of paper from the bacon box, and with a charred match printed, "Going to." She looked up. Where are we going? He looked at her, and she added quickly, I mean, what town? We'll have to go to a town somewhere, you know, to get back to New Orleans so I can get some clothes and my $17. What's the name of a town? After a while he said, I don't know. That's right. You never were over here before either, were you? Well, what's that town the fairies go to? The one Jenny's always talking about you have fun at. She stared again at the vague shape of the Nausicaa. Then she suddenly printed Mandeville. That's the name of it, Mandeville. Which way is Mandeville from here? He didn't know, and she added, No matter. We'll find it, I guess. She signed the note and laid it on the stern seat, weighting it with a small rock. Now, pull her off, she commanded, and soon there came back to them across the motionless water a faint thud. Goodbye, Nausicaa, she said. Wait, she added, I better put my shoes on, I guess. He gave her slippers, and she sat flat on the narrow beach and put them on, returning the crumpled stockings to him. Wait, she said again, taking the stockings again and flipping them out. She slid one of them over her brown arm and withdrew a crumpled wad, the money she had been able to rake up by ransacking her aunt's and Mrs. Wiseman's and Miss Jameson's things. She reached her hand, and he drew her to her feet. You better carry the money, she said, giving it to him. Now for breakfast, she said, clutching his hand. End of section 29. Section 30 of Mosquitos. Section 30. 6 o'clock. Trees, heavy and ancient with moss, loomed out of it hugely and grayly. The mist might have been a sluggish growth between and among them. No, this mist might have been the first prehistoric morning of time itself. It might have been the very substance in which the seed of the beginning of things fecundated. And these huge and silent trees might have been the first of living things, too recently born to know either fear or astonishment, dragging their sluggish umbilical cords from out the old miasmic womb of a nothingness, latent and dreadful. She crowded against him, suddenly quiet and subdued, trembling a little, like a puppy against the reassurance of his arm. Gee, she said in a small voice. That small sound did not die away. It merely dissolved into the moist gray surrounding them, and it was as if, at a movement of any sort, the word might repeat itself somewhere between sky and ground, as a pebble is shaken out of cotton batting. He put his arm across her shoulders, and at his touch, she turned quickly beneath his armpit, hiding her face. I'm hungry, she said at last, in that small voice. That's what's the matter with me, she added with more assurance. I want something to eat. Want me to build a fire? He asked out of the dark, coarse crown of her head. No, she answered quickly, holding to him. Besides, We are too close to the lake here. Somebody might see it. We ought to get farther from the shore." She clung to him, inside his arm. "I guess we'd better wait here until the fog goes away, though. A piece of bread will do." She reached her brown hand. "Let's sit down somewhere. Let's sit down and eat some bread," she decided. "And when the fog goes away, we can find the road. Come on, let's find a log or something." She drew him by the hand, and they sat at the foot of a huge tree, on the damp ground, while she delved into the basket. She broke a bit from the loaf and gave it to him, and a fragment for herself. Then she slid further down against her propped heels until her back rested against him, and bit from her bread. She sighed contentedly. "There now. Don't you just love this?" She raised her grave, chewing face to look at him. "All gray and lonesome. Makes you feel kind of cold on the outside and warm inside, doesn't it? Say, you aren't eating your bread. Eat your bread, David. I love bread, don't you?" She moved again, inward upon herself. In some way she seemed to get herself yet closer against him. The mist was already beginning to thin, breaking with heavy reluctance before a rumor of motion too faint to be called wind. The mist broke raggedly and drifted in sluggish wraiths that seemed to devour all sound, swaying and swinging like huge spectral apes from tree to tree, rising and falling, revealing somber patriarchs of trees, hiding them again. From far, far back in the swamp, there came a hoarse, homely sound, an alligator's love song. "Chicago," she murmured. "Didn't know we were so near home." Soon the sun, and she sprawled against him, contentedly munching her bread. End of Section 30. Section 31 of Mosquitos. Section 31. 7 o'clock. They hadn't found the road, but they had reached a safe distance from the lake. She had discovered a butterfly larger than her two hands, clinging to a spotlight of sun on the ancient trunk of a tree, moving its damp, lovely wings like laboring exposed lungs of glass or silk. And while he gathered firewood, a difficult feat, since neither of them had thought of a hatchet, she paused at the edge of a black stream to harry a sluggish, thick serpent with a small switch. A huge, gaudy bird came up and cursed her, and the snake ignored her with a sort of tired unillusion and plopped heavily into the thick water. Then, looking around, she saw a thin fire in the somber, equivocal twilight of the trees. They ate again. The oranges. They broiled bacon, scorched it, dropped it on the ground, retrieved it, and wiped it and chewed it down, and the rest of the loaf. "Don't you just love camping?" She sat cross-legged and wiped a strip of bacon on her skirt. "Let's always do this, David. Let's don't ever have a house where you've always got to stay in one place. We'll just go around like this, camping. David." She raised the strip of bacon and met his dumb, yearning eyes. She poised her bacon. "Don't look at me like that," she told him sharply. Then, more gently, "Don't ever look at anybody like that. You'll never get anybody to run away with you if you look at him like that, David." She extended her hand. His hand came out, slowly and diffidently, but her grip was hard, actual. She shook his arm for emphasis. "How was I looking at you?" he asked after a while, in a voice that didn't seem to him to be his voice at all. "How do you want me to look at you?" "Oh, you know how. Not like that, though. Like that. You look at me just like a man, that's all. Or a dog. Not like David." She writhed her hand free and ate her strip of bacon. Then she wiped her fingers on her dress. "Give me a cigarette." The mist had gone, and the sun came already sinister and hot among the trees, upon the miasmic earth. She sat on her crossed legs, replete, smoking. Abruptly, she poised the cigarette in a tense cessation of all movement. Then she moved her head quickly and stared at him in consternation. She moved again, suddenly slapping her bare leg. "What is it?" he asked. For reply, she extended her flat tan palm. In the center of it was a dark speck and a tiny splash of crimson. "Good Lord, give me my stockings," she exclaimed. "We'll have to move." "Gee, I'd forgotten about them," she said, drawing her stockings over her straightening legs. She sprang to her feet. "We'll soon be out, though." "David, stop looking at me that way. Look like you were having a good time, at least." "Cheer up, David. A man would think you were losing your nerve already. Buck up. I think it's grand, running off like this. Don't you think it's grand?" She turned her head and saw again that diffident, still gesture of his hand touching her dress. Across the hot morning, there came the high screech of the Nausicaa's whistle. End of section 31. Section 32 of Mosquitos. Section 32. 8 o'clock. "No, sir," the nephew answered patiently. "It's a pipe." "A pipe, eh?" repeated Major Ayers, glaring at him with his hard, affable little eyes. "You make pipes, eh?" "I'm making this one," the nephew replied with preoccupation. "Came away and left your own ashore, perhaps," Major Ayers suggested after a time. "Nah, I don't smoke 'em. I'm just making a new kind." "Oh, I see. For the market." Major Ayers's mind slowly took fire. "Money in it, eh? Americans would buy a new kind of pipe, too. You've, made arrangements for the marketing of it, of course?" "No, I'm just making it for fun," the nephew explained, in that patient tone you use with obtuse children. Major Ayers glared at his bent, preoccupied head. "Yes," he agreed. "Best to say nothing about it until you've completed all your computations regarding the cost of production." "Don't blame you at all." Major Ayers brooded with calculation. He said, "Americans really would buy a new sort of pipe. Strange no one had thought of that." The nephew carved minutely at his pipe. Major Ayers said secretly, "No, I don't blame you at all. But when you've done, you'll require capital, that sort of thing, you know. And then, a word to your friends at the proper time, eh?" The nephew looked up. "A word to my friends," he repeated. "Say, I'm just making a pipe, I tell you. A pipe. Just to be making it. For fun." "Right you are," Major Ayers agreed suavely. "No offense, dear lad. I don't blame you. Don't blame you at all. Experienced the same situation myself." 9 o'clock. They had found the road at last. 2 faint scars and a powder of unbearable dust upon a raised levee traversing the swamp. But between them and the road was a foul, sluggish width of water and vegetation and biology. Huge cypress roots thrust up like weathered bones out of a green scum, and a quaking, neither earth nor water. And always those bearded eternal trees, like gods, regarding without alarm this puny desecration of a silence of air and earth and water, ancient, when hoary old Time himself was a pink and dreadful miracle in his mother's arms. It was she who found the fallen tree, who first essayed its oozy, treacherous bark, and first stood in the empty road, stretching monotonously in either direction, between battalioned patriarchs of trees. She was panting a little, whipping a broken green branch about her body, watching him as he inched his way across the fallen trunk. "Come on, David," she called impatiently. "Here's the road. We're all right now." He was across the ditch, and he now struggled up the rank, reluctant levee bank. She leaned down and reached her hand to him, but he would not take it, so she leaned further and clutched his shirt. "Now, which way is Mandeville?" "That way," he answered immediately, pointing. "You said you never were over here before," she accused. "No, but we were west of Mandeville when we went around, and the lake is back yonder, so Mandeville must be that way." "I don't think so. It's this way. See, the swamp isn't so thick this way. Besides, I just know it's this way. He looked at her a moment. "All right," he agreed. "I guess you are right. But don't you know which way it is? Isn't there any way you could tell?" She bent and whipped her legs with the broken branch. "Well, the lake is over yonder, and we were west of Mandeville last night." "You're just guessing," she interrupted harshly. "Yes," he answered. "I guess you are right." "Well, we've got to go somewhere. We can't stand here." She twitched her shoulders, writhing her body beneath her dress. "Which way, then?" "Well, She turned abruptly in the direction she had chosen. "Come on, I'll die here." She strode on ahead. End of section 32. Section 33 of Mosquitos. Section 33, 10 o'clock. She was trying to explain it to Pete. The sun had risen, sinister and hot, climbing into a drowsy haze, and up from a low, vague region, neither water nor sky, clouds like fat little girls in starched frocks marched solemnly. "It's a thing they join at that place he's going to, only they have to work to join it, and sometimes you don't even get to join it then, and the ones that do join it don't get anything except a little button or something." "Pipe down and try it again," Pete told her, leaning with his elbows and one heel hooked backward on the rail, his hat slanted across his reckless dark face, squinting his eyes against the smoke of his cigarette. "What are you talking about?" "There's something in the water," Jenny remarked with placid astonishment, creasing her belly over the rail and staring downward into the faintly rippled water, while the land breeze molded her little green dress. "It must have fell off the boat." "Oh, I'm talking about that college he's going to. You work to join things there. You work 3 years, she says, and then maybe you—" "What college?" "I forgot. It's the one where they have big football games in the papers every year. He's Yale and Harvard?" "Uh-huh, that's the one," she said. "He's—" "Which one? Yale or Harvard?" "Uh-huh. And so he—" "Come on, baby, you're talking about 2 colleges. Was it Yale, she said, or Harvard, or Sing Sing, or what?" "Oh," Jenny said, "it was Yale. Yes, that's the one," she said. "And he'll have to work 3 years to join it, and even then, maybe he won't." "Well, what about it? Suppose he does work 3 years. What about it?" "Why, if he does, he won't get anything except a little button or something, even if he does join it, I mean." Jenny brooded softly, creasing herself upon the rail. "He's going to have to work for it," she recurred again in a dull, soft amazement. "He'll have to work 3 years for it, and even then, he may not—" "Don't be dumb all your life, kid," Pete told her. Wind and sun were in Jenny's drowsing hair. The deck swept trimly forward, deserted. The others were gathered on the deck above. Occasionally they could hear voices, and a pair of masculine feet were crossed innocently upon the rail directly over Pete's head. A half-smoked cigarette spun in a small, twinkling arc astern. Jenny watched it drop lightly onto the water, where it floated amid the other rubbish that had caught her attention. Pete spun his own cigarette backward over his shoulder, but this one sank immediately, to her placid surprise. "Let the boy join his club if he wants," Pete added. "What kind of club is he? What do they do?" "I don't know. They just join it. You work for 3 years, she said." 3 years? Gee, by that time you'd be too old to do anything if you got to join it. 3 years? My Lord. "Sit down and give your wooden leg a rest," Pete said. "Don't be a dumbbell forever." He examined the deck a moment, then without changing his position against the rail, he turned his head toward Jenny. "Give Papa a kiss." Jenny also glanced briefly up the deck. Then she came with a sort of weary docility, raising her ineffable face. Presently, Pete withdrew his face. "What's the matter?" he asked. "The matter with what?" said Jenny innocently. Pete unhooked his heel and he put his arm around Jenny. Their faces merged again, and Jenny became an impersonal softness against his mouth, and a single blue eye, and a drowsing aura of hair. 11 o'clock. The swamp did not seem to end, ever, On either side of the road it brooded, fetid and timeless, somber and hushed and dreadful. The road went on through a bearded tunnel, beneath the sinister brass sky. The dew was long departed, and dust puffed listlessly to her fierce striding. David tramped behind her, watching 2 splotches of dead blood on her stockings. Abruptly, there were 3 of them, and he drew abreast of her. She looked over her shoulder, showing him her wrung face. "Don't come near me," she cried. "Don't you see you make 'em worse?" He dropped behind again, and she stopped suddenly, dropping the broken branch and extending her arms. "David," she said. He went to her awkwardly, and she clung to him, whimpering. She raised her face, staring at him. "Can't you do something? They hurt me, David." But he only looked at her with this unutterable, dumb longing. She tightened her arms, released him quickly. "We'll be out soon." She picked up the branch again. "It'll be different then. Look, there's another big butterfly." Her squeal of delight became again a thin, whimpering sound. She strode on. Jenny found Mrs. Wiseman in their room, changing her dress. "Mr. Taliaferro," Jenny began. Then she said, "He's an awful refined man, I guess. Don't you think so?" "Refined," the other repeated. "Exactly that. Ernest invented that word." "He did." Jenny went to the mirror and looked at herself a while. "Her brother's refined too, ain't he?" "Whose brother, honey?" Mrs. Wiseman paused and watched Jenny curiously. "The one with that saw." "Oh, yes, fairly so. He seems to be too busy to be anything else." "Why?" "In that pop-eyed man. All Englishmen are refined, though. There was one in a movie I saw. He was awful refined." Jenny looked at her reflected face, timelessly and completely entertained. Mrs. Wiseman gazed at Jenny's fine, minted hair, at her sleazy little dress, revealing the divine inevitability of her soft body. "Come here, Jenny," she said. End of section 33.